everyone, welcome to the Scrum Full Course by Simplilearn. If you're looking to become a master in Agile project management, this course is your gateway to success. In 2024, the demand for Scrum professionals is at an all-time high, with organizations across industries searching for certified Scrum Masters to lead their teams. The need for skilled Scrum practitioners continues to grow as more companies adopt Agile methodologies, making this the perfect time to build your expertise. With high demand comes attractive salaries and exciting career opportunities. And this course will equip you with the knowledge and skills to excel in Scrum and Agile practices.
Craving a career upgrade? Subscribe, like, and comment below. Dive into the link in the description to fast-track your ambitions. Whether you're making a switch or aiming higher, Simplilearn has your back.
But before we commence, just some quick info for you. If you're interested in elevating your career and becoming a professional Scrum Master, our best rated Certified Scrum Master certification training is your ticket to success. We guarantee you'll pass on the first attempt as you join one of our 20+ live cohorts each month for 16 hours of interactive training led by globally renowned certified Scrum trainers. Engage in hands-on learning through role plays, simulations, and case studies, and gain complimentary access to Agile and Scrum courses. Enjoy a 2-year membership with Scrum Alliance, earn 20 PDUs and 16 CEUs, and benefit from a 100% money-back guarantee. Enroll now and start your journey to becoming a professional Scrum Master. So, don't forget to check out the course in the description box and pinned comment. Without any further ado, let's get started.
So guys, what is basically in Scrum? Scrum is an agile framework that has revolutionized the way complex projects are managed and completed. Its adaptability, focus on collaboration, and iterative approach makes it an ideal methodology for dynamic and fast-paced environments. While Scrum is most commonly associated with software development, its principles and practices can be applied to various industries to enhance efficiency and product quality. This comprehensive tutorial aims to provide you with a deeper understanding of Scrum, covering its roles, artifacts, event processes, benefits, and practical implementation. By the end of this tutorial, you will have a solid grasp of Scrum and how to leverage its potential for your projects. Now let us move on to the second part, with a thorough discussion on what are Scrum roles. The product owner plays a very crucial role in Scrum, acting as a voice of the customer. So this is the first Scrum role that we see in Scrum methodology, that is a product owner. This individual is basically responsible for defining and prioritizing the product backlog, ensuring that the team focuses on the most valuable tasks. The product owner works closely with stakeholders to gather requirements, set clear goals, and make informed decisions about the product direction. The key responsibilities of the product owner includes defining the product vision and roadmap, creating and managing the product backlog, prioritizing backlog items based on value, risk and urgency, ensuring that the team understands the backlog items and their importance, and also accepting or rejecting completed work based on predefined criteria. Next role we have is Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is a facilitator and coach who ensures that Scrum framework is followed effectively. This role involves removing obstacles that hinder the team's progress, promoting a culture of continuous improvement, and fostering collaboration. The Scrum Master acts as a servant leader, supporting the team in achieving their goals without dictating how they should work. The key responsibilities of the Scrum Master includes facilitating Scrum events like sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. Then comes removing impediments that block the team's progress. Moving ahead, we have also coaching the team on Scrum practices and principles. Then we have a thorough discussion on protecting the team from external distractions and interruptions. And finally, promoting a healthy team dynamic and addressing conflicts. Next one we have is the development team. So guys, the development team consists of professionals who work collaboratively to deliver a product increment. This self-organizing team is cross-functional, meaning it possesses all the skills necessary to complete the work without relying on external sources. The development team is accountable for creating high-quality increments that meet the definition of done. The key responsibilities of development team includes estimating planning work during sprint planning, collaborating daily to achieve the sprint goal, delivering a potentially shippable product increment by the end of the sprint, then continuously improving their processes and practices, and finally, maintaining transparency through regular communications and updates. Now let us move on and understand about Scrum artifacts. The first one that we have all over here is product backlog. The product backlog is a dynamic list of all the works needed for the product. It includes features, enhancements, bug fixes, and technical tasks. The product owner is basically responsible for maintaining and prioritizing the backlog, ensuring that it reflects the current needs and goals of the project. The product backlog is continuously refined with items being added, removed, or reprioritized as necessary. The product backlog serves as a single source of truth for the team, providing a clear roadmap of what needs to be done. It is essential that backlog items are well defined with clear acceptance criteria to guide the development team in delivering the expected value. Then we have the sprint backlog. The sprint backlog is a subset of the product backlog, containing items selected for the current sprint. During sprint planning, the team decides which backlog items they can commit to completing within the sprint. The sprint backlog also includes a plan for how the team will accomplish this work. Sprint backlog provides a focused and actionable plan for the team, outlining the tasks and goals for the sprint. It is a living document continuously updated as the team progresses and learns about the work. The sprint backlog helps the team stay organized and aligned with the sprint goal. Then we have is increment. Increment is the sum of all the work at the end of the sprint. It represents a potentially shippable product that meets the definition of done, a set of criteria ensuring that work is complete and of high quality. The increment includes not only the new features added during the sprint, but also any improvements or fixes made to the existing features. The increment provides tangible evidence of progress, allowing stakeholders to inspect and evaluate the product. It serves as the basis for feedback and decision making, enabling the team to adapt and refine their approach in subsequent sprints. Then we have is sprint. Now let us move on and discuss about some of the Scrum events. The first one that we have all over here is sprint. A sprint is a time box period typically lasting 24 weeks, during which the team works to create a product increment. The fixed duration of the sprint provides a regular rhythm for the team, promoting consistent delivery and continuous improvement. Each sprint begins with a sprint planning and ends with a sprint review and sprint retrospective. Next one we have is sprint planning. It is an event where the team defines what will be accomplished in the upcoming sprint. The product owner presents the high priority backlog items and the team collaborates to select those they can complete within the sprint. Together, they set a clear sprint goal and create a plan for achieving it. During sprint planning, the team breaks down the selected backlog items into smaller tasks and estimates the effort required. This detailed planning ensures that everyone understands the work and how it contributes to the sprint goal. A sprint planning sets the stage for a focused and productive sprint. Next one we have is the daily scrum. Daily scrum is a short time box meeting, usually lasting for 15 minutes, held every day during the sprint. The purpose of the daily scrum is to synchronize the team activities, discuss progress, and identify any obstacles. Each team member shares what they did the previous day, what they plan to do today, and any issues they are facing. The daily scrum promotes transparency and accountability, ensuring that everyone is aligned and aware of the team status. It also provides an opportunity to quickly address and resolve impediments, keeping the team on track to achieve the sprint goal. Next we have all over here is called sprint review. So guys, sprint review is held at the end of the sprint to inspect the completed work and gather feedback from stakeholders. The team demonstrates the product increment, highlighting what was accomplished during the sprint. Stakeholders provide input and the product owner updates the product backlog based on the feedback. The sprint review fosters collaboration and transparency, allowing stakeholders to see the product's progress and influence its direction. It also provides an opportunity to celebrate success and identify areas for improvement. And finally, we have the sprint retrospective. The sprint retrospective is the final event of the sprint, where the team reflects on their processes and practices. The goal is to identify what went well, what could be improved, and how to enhance their performance in future sprints. The team discusses these insights, creates action items to address any issues. The sprint retrospectives promotes a culture for continuous improvement, encouraging the team to learn from their experiences and make incremental changes. By regularly reflecting and adapting, the team can optimize their processes and achieve better outcomes. Now let us understand the Scrum process flow. The Scrum process revolves around the sprint cycle, beginning with the sprint planning and ending with the sprint retrospective. This cycle ensures a regular cadence of work and continuous delivery of value. If we talk about the first one, we have the sprint planning here. Here the team selects the item for the product backlog and defines the sprint goal. They break down the work into smaller tasks and create the plan for the sprint. Now guys, let us discuss about the Scrum process flow. The first one that we have all over here, that is called as sprint planning. Here, the team selects the items from the product backlog, defines the sprint goal. They break down the work into smaller tasks and create a plan for the sprint. Next one, we have the daily Scrum. Daily Scrum here, the team meets daily to discuss progress, plans, and challenges. This meeting keeps everyone aligned and allows for quick adjustments. Third is sprint review. At the end of the sprint, the team demonstrates the completed work to the stakeholders and gathers feedback. The product owner updates the product backlog based on their feedback. And fourth one we have all over here is sprint retrospective. Here the team reflects on their processes and practices, identifying areas for improvement. They create action items to enhance their performance in future sprints. I hope so. You would have got a brief idea regarding Scrum process flow. Now let us move on to understanding the benefits of Scrum. So guys, Scrum offers several significant benefits that can transform how teams work and deliver value. Here are some of the key advantages. The first one that we have all over here is increased transparency. Scrum promotes transparency through its regular events and clear artifacts. The daily Scrum, sprint review, sprint retrospective ensures that everyone is aware of the team's progress, challenges, and successes. This transparency helps build trust among the team member and stakeholders, fostering a collaborative and open working environment. Next one we have all over here is improved team collaboration. The collaborative nature of the Scrum encourages team members to work closely together, leveraging their diverse skills and expertise. The Scrum Master facilitates this collaboration, helping the team communicate effectively and resolve conflicts. This teamwork leads to better problem solving, innovation, and overall productivity. Next one we have enhanced ability to adapt to changes. Scrum's iterative approach allows teams to quickly adapt to changes in requirements, market conditions, or customer feedback. By delivering small functional increments regularly, the team can gather feedback and make necessary adjustments. This flexibility ensures that product remains aligned with the stakeholders' needs and expectations. And finally, it provides faster delivery of valuable products increments. Scrum's time-boxed sprints drive the regular delivery of product increments, enabling faster time to market. This rapid delivery cycle allows stakeholders to see tangible progress and realize value sooner. It also reduces the risk of project delays and enhances the team ability to meet deadlines. Now let us discuss some of the common challenges of following Scrum methodology. We all know that Scrum offers many benefits, but it also comes with its own set of challenges. Here are some of the common issues teams may face. The first one that we have all over here is resistance to change. Introducing Scrum can be met with resistance, especially in organizations accustomed to traditional project management methods. To overcome this resistance, it's important to provide education and training on Scrum principles and practices. Involving team members and stakeholders in transition progress and highlighting the benefits of the Scrum can also help build support. Next, we have handling distributed teams. Distributed teams can face communication and collaboration challenges. To address these issues, it's crucial to leverage technology tools such as video conferencing, instant messaging, and collaborative software. Establishing clear communication protocols and regular virtual meetings can also help maintain alignment and cohesion among team members. Then we have managing large projects with Scrum. Scaling Scrum for large projects can be complex. One approach is to adopt frameworks like Scrums of Scrums, Nexus, or SAFe, which is Scaled Agile Framework. It provides guidelines for coordinating multiple Scrum teams, ensuring that teams are cross-functional and self-organizing with clear communication channels, which are very essential for managing large projects effectively. Now let us dive into most interesting part. That is, what are the tools and softwares which are used for Scrum? So guys, several tools and softwares can support Scrum practices, enhancing productivity and collaboration. Here are some of the most popular options. The first one I would recommend is Jira. Jira is a widely used project management tool that offers robust support for Scrum. It provides features for creating and managing product backlogs, sprint backlogs, and tracking progress through visual boards. Jira's customizable workflows and reporting capabilities make it a powerful tool for Scrum team. Next one we have all over here is Trello. Trello is a flexible, user-friendly tool that uses boards, lists, and cards to organize tasks. It's well suited for Scrum teams, allowing them to create and manage backlogs, plan sprints, and track progress. Trello's simplicity and visual nature make it easy to use, especially for smaller teams or projects. And finally, we have Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps is a comprehensive suite of development tools that supports Scrum and other Agile methodologies. It includes features or backlog management, sprint planning, continuous integration, and deployment. Azure DevOps integrates seamlessly with other Microsoft tools, making it a good choice for teams using Microsoft ecosystem. So guys, in this tutorial, we have covered the fundamental aspects of Scrum, including its roles, artifacts, events, and processes.
Are you eager to transform your career and become a professional Scrum Master? Or are you stuck in the same company but want to level up your designation? If you need clarification about the PSM process and exam, don't worry. We've got it covered in this video. But first, let me tell you a story about Matthew, a software engineer who found himself in a rut. Despite his hard work and dedication, he felt his career was stagnating. He knew he had the potential for more, but wasn't sure how to unlock his growth. That's when he stumbled upon the Professional Scrum Master certification. At first, Matthew was hesitant. He wasn't sure if the certification was worth the investment of time and money. But as he learned more about the PSM and the doors it could open, he became determined to earn this globally recognized credential. Matthew's journey to becoming a PSM wasn't easy. He had to juggle his work responsibilities with studying the Scrum Guide, attending training sessions, and practicing mock exams. But his perseverance paid off when he finally passed the PSM exam with flying colors. With his newfound Scrum Master skills, Matthew's career took off. His company recognized his dedication and promoted him to a leadership role, where he could apply his knowledge of the Scrum framework to drive better collaboration, faster delivery cycles, and higher quality products. In this video, we will dive into the details of the PSM certification, why get PSM certified, the PSM certification level, syllabus, and the cost. Is it worth the investment or not? Eligibility criteria, and the tips and tricks for cracking the PSM exam. So if you are ready to take your career to a new heights like Matthew, the PSM certification could be your game changer. So let's start with the first topic, that is, what is PSM certification? Think of it as a workshop that's as fun as watching your favorite Netflix series, but packed with valuable lessons like a masterclass. Scrum.org offers this certification to help you deep dive into the world of Scrum. Let's check out the website here. So this is the website scrum.org, and it provides all the valuable resources you need to master this professional Scrum training program. Alright, let's move further. Through hands-on activities and interactive learning, you will become a skilled Scrum Master, ready to lead your team to success. But wait, there's more. The Professional Scrum Master certification is renowned worldwide for its tough exams, great instructors, and consistent course material. By participating in discussions and practical exercises, you'll not only understand Scrum principles but also embrace the Agile mindset. This makes the PSM certification highly valued by companies, which often seek PSM holders to fill their Scrum Master positions. Moving on to our next topic, that is, why should you pursue the PSM certification? Now, you might be thinking, why should I bother with the PSM certification? Wait, let me tell you. This certification validates your Scrum expertise, giving you a massive competitive edge in the job market. Many companies these days only hire PSM holders for Scrum Master roles. But it's not just about the jobs. The PSM helps you develop essential skills like collaboration, risk management, and driving value within your organization. It makes your resume stand out, showing employers you are up to date on industry standards and can lead teams to success using Scrum. Getting certified is the best way to truly master Scrum fundamentals, Agile principles, and best practices. With the PSM, you will be productivity powerhouse, inspiring your team to stay focused and organized towards every goal. You'll foresee risk before they happen and ensure we are delivering real value and quality. And let's not forget the financial benefits. PSM holders stands apart with practical Scrum knowledge and non-certified pros. According to the pay scale, the average PSM certified salary is a staggering of $97,000 annually. So if you want that competitive edge, those valuable skills, and the potential for a higher paycheck, the PSM certification is no-brainer investment in your future success. Let us now discuss the different levels of the PSM certification. The PSM certification is offered at 3 distinct levels, allowing you to progressively deepen your knowledge and expertise. At first, we have the PSM-1, which is the foundational. This entry-level certification validates your understanding of the Scrum framework, its principles, and the role of a Scrum Master. PSM-2, which is the intermediate, building upon PSM-1, this level focuses on advanced Scrum knowledge, extensive Scrum experience, and the ability to apply Scrum in complex situations. PSM-3, which is the advanced certification, this level of certification requires a deep understanding of Scrum application, processes, values, and in-depth Scrum experience, or attendance at the professional Scrum Master training. Let's discuss the cost structure of the 3 different examination levels. PSM-1 has an exam fee of $150 with a $150 retake fee. PSM-2 costs Rs. $250 for the exam and retake fee. And PSM-3 commands $500 for both the examination and the retake fee. All 3 certifications are valid for a lifetime. It's important to note that the price of the PSM-1 certification varies by nation. In India, it ranges from $23,500 to $26,000, while in USA, it costs between $999 to $1,450. While the investment may seem substantial, the knowledge, skills, and the recognition you'll gain from the PSM certification can be invaluable for your career growth and the professional development. Additionally, the potential for higher salaries and improved job prospects often outweighs the initial cost. Moving on to the eligibility criteria. Each level of the PSM certification has a specific eligibility criteria. PSM-1. While training is optional, candidates should have a solid understanding of the Scrum Guide. PSM-2. Candidates should have advanced Scrum knowledge, extensive Scrum experience, or have completed the professional Scrum Master course. PSM-3. Candidates must have passed the PSM-1 and the PSM-2 certifications and have a deep understanding of the Scrum application, processes, and values. In-depth Scrum experience or have attended the professional Scrum training course. But what are the required syllabus? Let's discuss. The PSM exam is conducted online with a time duration of 60 minutes. It consists of 80 MCQs and true-false questions and is available only in English language. This certification covers a comprehensive syllabus designed to equip you with the knowledge and the skills necessary to become effective Scrum Master. The syllabus includes the Scrum framework, a thorough understanding of the Scrum Guide, roles, events, artifacts, and foundational principles. Scrum theory and principles, mastering the empirical process, Scrum's guiding principle and its core values. Self-organizing and cross-functional teams, facilitating and empowering cross-functional teams to foster flexibility, creativity, and productivity. Facilitation and coaching, developing the mindset and skills to facilitate, coach teams and organization in adopting and embracing the Scrum framework. Next, we will talk about the PSM certification process. At first, you have to pass an online assessment by scrum.org and pay the required fee. While training isn't mandatory, enrolling in professional Scrum training courses hosted by scrum.org is highly recommended to prepare for the examination. You can choose in between the professional Scrum Master or foundational courses. Next, study the Scrum Guide thoroughly. This is crucial for passing the certification exams on scrum.org website. For PSM1, prepare an intensive 60-minute exam with 80 true and false and MCQ questions. You need to answer at least 68 questions correctly to pass, with the passing score set at a high of 85%. It's a tough challenge, but with the right preparation strategies, that prestigious PSM badge will be yours. Stay focused, study hard, and get ready to join the ranks of an elite Scrum Master. Passing the PSM exam, especially at higher levels, can be challenging due to rigorous nature of the assessment. Here are some of the tips to increase your chances of success. At first, you must attend the professional Scrum Master training courses provided by scrum.org. Thoroughly study and understand the Scrum Guide as it serves the primary resource for exam questions. Practice with mock examination, sample questions, and assessment to gauge your level of preparation. Leverage resources like the Scrum Guide, audio, open assessment, and study groups to reinforce your learning. Develop a deep understanding of Scrum theory, principles, and values, as well as practical application in real-world scenarios. By investing in the PSM certification, you'll not only validate your expertise in the Scrum framework, but also position yourself as a valuable asset to organization seeking skilled Scrum Masters and Agile leaders. With the right preparation and dedication, you can unlock new career opportunities and drive successful project delivery using Agile and Scrum methodologies.
Then there is something called Scrum Board, which is used during this flow of Scrum, right from product backlog to the creation of that increment. So let us look at what is a Scrum Board, which is used during the Scrum practice. So Scrum Board is a physical or virtual tool that helps team to visualize items in the sprint backlog. So it helps in tracking what is being delivered, what is in progress, and what needs to be delivered further. So it shows all action items during the daily Scrum, helping keeping the team focused on tasks that need to be completion and the priorities of those. The Scrum Board is usually present in a place that's accessible to all team members. It is a visual board, right? And can be physical, whiteboard and stickers, or virtual software tools which can be used and displayed on the screen. So the Scrum Board is divided into different slots like to do, in progress, and done. So when new sprints are started, the existing board is reset and new Scrum Board is created. So since it is visual system, I think it is taking the thought from Kanban. So visual system always works effective because the moment I see something is put against my name that I need to complete this, it's quite obvious to me that I will put efforts to complete it. So it's a conscious effort what I will put. It works on my consciousness. So something which is not visible to me, it is not out of sight is out of mind. So I will not work on it. So there is a tendency to forget.
First slide here has to do with user stories and epics. And what I want to do, team, is I want to, before we get into the user stories, I want to go to the whiteboard and I want to just give you a little bit more information that might help us in organizing our discussion that we're about to embark on here. So a word that is not in our slides is themes. Themes are epics and user stories grouped together. You know, similar epics and user stories grouped together for planning purposes. So an epic is big. You would never do an epic a theme in a sprint. It's too big. So it's used for planning purposes. Below that, I would put epics. Epics are low priority, large user stories, meaning that an epic will eventually have to be disaggregated into multiple user stories. The reason it would be low priority is because if an epic was higher up on the product backlog, it would have to be more detailed. That's when you would break it down. So epics are usually going to live at the lower priority levels of a product backlog, and as user stories are completed and the epic rises in priority, it will eventually be broken down into more manageable user stories. So great big low priority user stories. Then we have user stories themselves. User stories are functions or features that the product owner wants to have developed. A user story turns into working software that provides value to the customer. And the product owner is the customer voice. The product owner is the one who would accept or reject completed user stories. And then there are tasks. And a reminder, when we were talking about the sprint planning meeting, we said the sprint planning meeting is got two parts to it. The first part is selecting all of the user stories that are going to be included in the sprint, and then disaggregating each of those user stories into tasks. That's done in the sprint planning meeting, and then those tasks are the things that are actually then done when the work of the sprint begins. User stories can be estimated in story points or ideal days. Most teams favor story points. They might start with ideal days, but they will then usually end up going to story points. Tasks are estimated in ideal time, which is usually hours. Okay, so now back to our slides. So at the top left, a use case could be an example of a user story. So it's something that the user wants to do and how the system should support it. A use case could be select and pay for items in a catalog. Now that could actually be an epic or maybe a theme, because maybe it would get disaggregated into log on screen, catalog, shopping cart, and checkout. But so the use case could either be a standalone user story, or it could actually be a number of user stories that would result from it. Below that requirement, it could be a functional requirement, a technical task, or even a bug fix. So I'm going to go back to the whiteboard, and a product backlog is going to have a lot of user stories that come from the customer, right? Whatever the customer wants done. But the team may know that it has to do some development work in order for the user stories to even be able to work. You know, there's some system level non-functional requirements that need to be done. And so there could be tech user stories. And then, can you see this low? I can't see your chats, but then there could also be defect user stories. There could even be risk user stories. Now, what could happen is that the product owner ranks these in priority. So this one first, then that one, then that one. And the team says, well, the only thing is that we have to do some development work before we can actually do user story 2. And so what we really need to do is insert that before the second priority user story. And so the priority of the user stories in the product backlog, while it might start with just being, you know, simple functional user stories coming from the product owner, it will evolve until it includes some other things that are also considerations when it comes to priorities, because of, you know, successor, predecessor relationships, dependencies, and things like that are considerations. A user story, back to the screen, bottom left now, the user story can use a fictitious user or a persona to help the team or the team and the product owner to get an idea of, okay, who's going to be doing this function, What are they going to need in order to be able to complete the function, etc. So you try and come up with an actual, well, a fictitious, but a person who's actually doing it, to kind of get out of the realm of, listing requirements and, specs and things like that, and say, okay, what's the user experience need to look like? Top right, template. A portion of a user story is, let me back up. So a user story card is usually going to contain a brief description of the user story using some kind of a meta-language format, like we're suggesting right here. As a user or persona, I want this feature so that I can. So not unlike our estimating session here. As a frequent traveler, I want to eat grapes so I can be healthier. In the one that we didn't do, the inventory system, as a customer, okay, there's a user. I want to get cash back so I don't have to wait in line at the bank. Okay, here's another user story. As a consumer, I want the shopping cart functionality to easily purchase items online. And maybe that could be customer as well. As an executive, right, as a suit, I want to generate a sales report so I know which departments need to improve their productivity. As a buyer, so you can see I tried to come up with these different roles right here: executive, buyer, sales rep, etc. And that's the format. As a type of user, I want some kind of goal or feature, and so that's some kind of a reason. Below that, connect the dots by writing all of the user stories necessary to uncover the entire use case. So like we were talking about right here, if you want to be able to purchase items online from a catalog, that might be multiple user stories in order to support that use case. And so, of course, we would want to be able to connect the dots and see where all the user stories fit into the overall goal of the project or release. And the stories, excuse me, are grouped to form an epic or higher level story, so epic or theme. Stories can then be split into child stories or tasks, and so that's what we were covering before, right? So you have themes up at the top. That's the biggest grouping, if you will, used primarily for high-level planning purposes. So you have your themes, then you have your epics, which are large user stories, low priority, and they're going to have to be broken down into smaller user stories. Like in the question that we had at the end of the last section, where the product owner needed something done, and the team said, well, based on the size of this user story, it's going to take 3 sprints to do. Well, a user story has to be small enough to be completed within a single sprint. So a sprint can contain more than one user story, but a user story cannot span sprints. So that feature or function that was in the question was probably more like an epic. It was something that would need to be disaggregated into smaller user stories, or perhaps it was more of a use case that would need more than one user story in order to actually deliver the overall use case. Let's see, as a product supervisor, I want to see an unfinished part list at the end of the day so that I can reallocate work the next day. Great user story description. Well done, Viraj. Did you hear that, team? As a product supervisor, I want to see an unfinished part list at the end of the day so I can reallocate work the next day. That is a well-crafted description of a user story. Now, here are some things that I want you to memorize. You were hoping I was done with the memorization part. So I want you to remember that we have to invest in our user stories. And I was going over to the whiteboard, and I didn't change cameras, so let me do that. I recommend, figuring out how you memorize best so that you can, not if you wanted to. What I recommend is being able to write out all of this stuff on plain white scrap paper in about 14 minutes, because that's the amount of free time you have in the tutorial when you're at when you're taking the test. Exin does it a little bit different. You maybe won't have a tutorial. The only time you'd have a tutorial is if you were at a center taking a test. Exin has other options, like you can do a paper-based test where you get a third party, a buddy or somebody who will agree to sort of proctor the test for you, or you can do it on your laptop all by yourself. And they have software that watches you while you're taking the test, and they require you to take the laptop and do like a 360 so that they can verify that you don't have any cheat sheets up on the wall or anything like that. But the point is you got to have this memorized, whether you're going to dump it out onto paper or not. When I took the test, I actually did the paper-based option. And that was because of some time constraints, and it was the quickest way to get me into the test. And so I didn't write out any of the stuff I'd memorized, but I had it memorized, and I had it memorized well enough that I could kind of recall it in my mind's eye. Okay, so we're talking about user stories, and you have to invest in your user stories. I like memorizing things by creating these charts that have the first letter of the word or phrase that you're memorizing in a separate column. And then I make up a story, that reminds me that I've got to have INVEST. This one is pretty easy. Probably just invest works. So let's go over that. I stands for independent. Independent, meaning that each user story stands on its own. You don't have, when we're doing Scrum, you don't do a user story that won't result in working software. We just talked about the description of user stories, right? So it's a user that needs some kind of functionality for some kind of a reason, and they're all independent. Will they work together? Of course they'll work together if that's a necessity, but if you developed a logon screen, you could demonstrate working software for the login screen. There might be another user story that is, has to do with displaying the catalog and being able to flag or select items that you want to purchase. But there'd be working software for that. Would they work together? Yes, but each user story would complete or result in some kind of working software, and they have to be independent. Negotiable. Negotiable in the way the user story is going to be implemented. The product owner doesn't dictate to the team. The team doesn't say it's only this way and we don't want to hear anything from you. So there are discussions about the size and implementation for each user story. So the product owner can't make it so detailed that there's no room for discussion and the possibility of the team coming up with solutions other than what the product owner was attempting to dictate. V stands for valuable, meaning each user story has to create value for the customer or the end user. E has to be estimable, as in estimatable, except estimatable is not really a word, it's estimable. And S is for small, has to be small enough to be done in a single sprint. If we're doing 2-week sprints, it has to be able to be done in 2 weeks or less. If we're doing 4-week sprints, it could be a larger user story, but it would still have to be done in 4 weeks or less. And then the last one, the T, is testable. Every user story needs to be testable, and it needs to be testable at 2 levels. Remember our triangle? It needs to be testable at the intrinsic quality level, unit tests, etc., and also testable at the extrinsic level, which is the customer point of view, which is acceptance. So every user story has to be testable. Okay, so that's invest, and so let's add that to our list of things to memorize. Invest. And then the next one we have here is the 3 C's of a user story. So the first C, team, is card. So user stories should be able to be written on a 4 by 6 inch index card or some media similar to that. Card. The second C is conversation. The user story card is the item that is used for the team and the product owner to talk and discuss in order to make sure that the product owner and the team are on the same page when it comes to what is actually supposed to be developed and what it's supposed to look like at the end, which leads us to the third one, which is confirmation. Each user story essentially has to have acceptance tests in it itself. So card 4 by 6, conversation, that's the starting point. That's where the team and the product owner discuss. And then eventually there will be acceptance tests included on the user story card in order to be used during the sprint review to assure that it's acceptable, that there's confirmation. Okay, so, let's add that to the memorization list. So, 3 C's. All right, now I've got an example here of a user story card. So we're looking right here. And if you were to go out on the internet and search user story cards, they would be similar. There would be some differences, of course. But typically what you're going to have is you're going to have a title or a name for the user story. And then there's going to be some kind of unique identifier, like user story 321. Then there will be the description like we just talked about. As a librarian, I want to have the facility of searching a book by different criteria so that I will save time while serving a customer. Then there might be some other descriptive words or links to other information that might be necessary. And then there would be acceptance criteria or tests. Sometimes these get included on the back of the card, but the point is that they are on the card rather. Then there will be an estimate of size. It could be ideal days or story points. As I mentioned, most teams do story points. That's more likely what you'll be tested on as opposed to ideal days. But, we'll cover both so you understand the differences. There's probably, it's not listed here, but there's probably going to be a value point assignment. This is where the product owner kind of determines in a relative way the value of the stories. Just like we were doing in planning poker, the product owner might say, well, this story is twice as valuable as this other one, comparing them together. And this is what these value points are what's used to prioritize the user stories. That's supposed to be a V, as in value points. And then typically there's also going to be a indication. Sometimes it's just by colors. It could be words that has to do with, where the story came from. Did it come from the customer? That would be considered a functional requirement. If it came from the team, that would be from the technical domain. I'm trying to write where from. It's not me, team, it's the mouse. Clearly, it's hard to do that. That's from, where from? Here it's got customer, tech. You could also have defect. You could maybe have risk. And then there's also going to be an X factor, which would be some kind of word, probably like stable, erratic, incomplete, something like that, to so that the team is designating the user story in respect to the amount of uncertainty or risk that's associated with that user story. And because all of that's a part of the story, right? The story is going to be turned into working software. There may need to be some efforts to actually figure out how to actually do that user story. So that's the X factor. Over to the right here on the same chart, we have some comments about if you are using a software package, excuse me, like Trello or Jira or something like that, excuse me, the user story cards will generally be able to contain more information using, you know, dynamic links and things like that. Could even include things like a responsible team member, or depending on how you're doing it, you would break the user story down into tasks, and you might have team members assigned to various tasks for the user story. Okay, so that's typically what a user story card is like. Sometimes they're cards, sometimes they're like on sticky notes, and they're put up on a Kanban board if you're using Kanban to track the project. If you have a story that is too large to be completed in a sprint, it's going to have to be subdivided, or we call it disaggregation, into smaller user stories. And there's 3 ways that we're proposing here that you could go about doing that. You could split it based on operational boundaries. For example, as an operator, one needs to manage reservations, which could be split. For example, there could be one portion that is that has to do with making a reservation, another one that has to do with modifying it, and yet another one that has to do with canceling it. So that could be split into, in this construct here, 3 separate user stories. You could also separate based on exceptions or cross-cutting concerns. For example, in the beginning, develop only one main path, like accept repayment for a loan. Then address exceptions, like what if a person overpays? Then come up with a user story that recognizes that and processes a refund, and or gives the option of allocating the overpayment to a future payment or something like that. And then also adds on other concerns like the check access restrictions or record name of operator. So maybe, you know, when you're working on accepting payments or processing refunds, it's going to check on who the operator is, or track that, so that if at a later time, you know, who was it that gave this refund here? Well, you could look and see, you know, okay, the operator's name was recorded. Or maybe you put some restrictions so that maybe not everybody is allowed to do a refund. And so you would have levels of users that have different privileges. Okay, and then down at the bottom, split based on data boundaries. For an example, you know, as an accountant, one needs to enter balance sheet information, which could then be split into summary information and separately receivable details, or, you know, maybe you could have AP, you know, so you could have different portions of the overall balance sheet activities that need to be done. So enter AR, enter AP, etc. Make sense? So just to kind of prompt you, give you some ideas about what to do in a Scrum project if you have the scenario arise where a user story is being estimated by the team and it won't fit into a sprint. It's too big. Now, when it comes to determining value for user stories, this is primarily owned by the product owner, right? And it always comes back to money, but money, the value can be looked at from different points of view. So new revenue, obviously, getting new customers and having them buy stuff. Well, below that, there's another consideration, incremental revenue. So somebody's in the process of placing an order. Maybe there are some premium features that could be add-ons at that point in time, or maybe added later on. So you have an existing customer who actually buys more of or enhanced parts of the existing thing they already purchased or are in the process of purchasing. Retained value. So this is, retaining customers so that they don't go to a competitor. And then the bottom one is operational efficiency. How could things be done to speed up the process of whatever it is, so that the cost of delivering the product is reduced. So this then leads us to a discussion about priorities, recognizing that there are some priority concerns that come from both the customer domain as well as the technical domain. And there are some prioritization models. If we look right here, there is value-based prioritization, and the hierarchy of that would be high value, followed by high risk, followed by high value, and then low risk, followed by low value, and then low risk. So, we might have written this a little bit differently, but that's value-based prioritization, and this is primarily the product owner with maybe some input from the team, just simply deciding what he or she wants done most, listening to the team say, well, there's some, greater risks with this user story than that, and so you'd probably want to persuade the product owner to take care of high-risk stuff first, because that would have an impact on the future things that need to be done. There's the Kano model, which looks at each of the user stories and classifies them as being mandatory, linear, or exciters. And the mandatory items are those user stories that are musts. And they'll never move the customer or the end user beyond neutral. It's if they're not there, it creates dissatisfaction. If the product owner and the team has done a good job in identifying what are the mandatory or threshold items, you would see that it just gets it to neutral. That's what's expected for the product. Linear items, user stories, are those user stories that as they are implemented progressively throughout the project and added to the feature set, it will linear increase customer satisfaction. And it can be, in their absence, dissatisfaction, all the way up to high implementation, creating a great deal of satisfaction for the customer. And then the third category is exciters and delighters. And those are features or functions, those are user stories that are not mandatory. And the absence of them will never result in satisfaction going below neutral. But by adding them, you could create excitement and delight for the customer. These would typically be things that are features that would be included in a premium version of the product, or maybe add-ons that are promoted, at the point of sale. Have you thought about this because it'll really help you, or whatever. So that's the Kano model, and then there's Uyghur's relative weighting method. And this is all using numbers. So each feature is given a value for its benefit, and its penalty, given a value for penalty, meaning what's the pain if that feature or function is not included. And then there is the cost side and the risk side. And then those are all calculated together, and that results in, a ranking or a hierarchy, which gives you the priority for the user stories. We also talked about Moscow, didn't we? Did we talk about Moscow? Moscow is another prioritization model. Must, could, I said that differently. Must, should, could, won't. Moscow, M-S-C-W. Must, should, could, won't. And we talked about that one. Thank you for that confirmation. Does it seem like a long time ago, or is it just me? I know it was just last weekend, but it's like last year. Okay, so now let's talk about velocity. Priyanka, that is exactly right. So velocity is the capacity of the team to complete work in a single iteration. So the team has estimated the user stories for size or ideal days, and the sprints are going to be 3 weeks in duration. Obviously, not all user stories can be completed in a single sprint and be done with the project. Well, I guess maybe I shouldn't say obviously. While I'm saying that, I'm thinking, well, maybe you had a very small, short duration project, so you could. But the point is that it's the team's capacity to complete work in a given sprint. And it is an observation. It's not a prediction. So if we're working on sprint 5 and we're working on determining what our velocity is, then it would be the average of the previous 4 sprints. If there were any outliers, you would disregard those. And so it's an observation. If we look over to question or box number 2 here, velocity is used to deal with determining how many user stories we are going to include in a given sprint, and also how many sprints are we going to need to create a release or a set of user stories. And here's an example. In box number 3, a team completed 5 user stories that were sized 5, 3, 8, 13, and 2. 2 user stories, each sized 5, were left half complete. What is the velocity of the team? And the answer is either going to be 31 or 36. 31 is the sum of the completed user stories. If you were 36, you were claiming half of the 2 that were 5. So that would be a total of 10. So you claim half of it, which would be 5, would take you to 36. But it's not going to be 36 because the only thing that counts towards progress is working software. So even if the team had finished 9 out of 10 story points for a user story, meaning it's almost done, and then the sprint ends, that doesn't get counted towards velocity. And you don't mess around with velocity. You can mess around with your estimating, and you can mess around with what user stories are going to be completed in a sprint, but you don't. The velocity is not variable. It is what it is based on past performance. When it comes to levels of planning, we have what's called the planning onion. And let me walk you through this here. Up at the broadest area is the vision level. So the vision level, that's the suits, right? They're the ones that have the strategy and objectives for the company and where it's going. And so they have that overall big vision for the company, which is likely going to include products. And each product should have a roadmap. My example of that website that I'm working on has 3 versions which make up the product roadmap. Version 1 is the free site, version 2 is the membership site, and version 3 is the pay referral commissions version of the site. And the product roadmap is then supported by releases. So for my project, I have 3 releases. So all of the user stories needed for the free version are in release 1. All of the additional user stories that are needed for the paid version, the subscriber version, and then also for version 3, those are all releases, 3 releases. And then for each sprint, we will be pulling user stories from the release that we're working on. A release is likely going to take multiple sprints. And then the sprints are populated by the individual user stories, which are then disaggregated into tasks. And we do the daily Scrum, which is the daily level of planning and coordination. So we call that the planning onion. We already kind of talked about the release and roadmap concept here. So let's just review this quickly. Prioritize high-level epics and determine goals and releases. So we'll use epics and themes in order to group things together. You know, what should be included in what's released. So what are the goals for the releases? Then the first bullet point, establish goals of release based on market demand, regulatory needs, or customer expectations. For each release, you want to estimate the target stories. Repeat until the target stories are assigned an iteration length. It's blending some things here. Be able to estimate velocity and then assign stories to the sprints. So we keep estimating the user stories and we keep organizing that until we can do that. We can come up with an iteration length, a sprint length, and then figure out what our velocity for each sprint is, and then assign stories to the sprints. The next bullet down, iterate until the user stories and release date meets conditions of satisfaction. So that's definition of done or acceptance for the release. And try not to pack too much into a release backlog. So just like you would not want to pack too many user stories into a sprint. You want to have the timelines appropriate and what are included in the events make sense. Okay, so here's a bit more about release planning on this slide here. You've got the product backlog here on the left, and then we might come up with a release plan, which could be flipped and could be looked at horizontally. And you probably plan about 3 releases in advance, or at least you're doing more of the detailed planning on that. Because things are going to emerge when we do, you know, sprint 1 that's going to help in sprint 2, and things that happen in sprints 1 and 2 that are going to help release 3. And then you've got, you know, your subsequent releases where we're just doing very high-level planning. It's called rolling wave planning, where we do detailed planning for things in the future in tandem with doing high-level planning for things in the future. Did I say that right? Detailed planning for things in the near term in tandem with high-level planning for things in the future. And we talked about deciding as late as possible, I believe, meaning that it's better to actually plan the later releases for purposes of making sure we have more information, the most information available. Okay, so estimation. Let's start at the top left. The principles behind estimation. Understand the cone of uncertainty, which is an estimate or best guess to begin with, and then progressively becomes more accurate. In fact, let's just take a break and look at the cone of uncertainty. So at the very beginning of a project, there's going to be a high level of uncertainty. If I were to draw this chart, I would make it a little bit more like this. So clearly, you're going to de-risk the project as early as you can, and then eventually all risk disappears when the project is done. Risk is uncertainty. Okay, below that, the only estimate that matters is the one given by the team. Supported by this comment here, nothing is impossible for the one who doesn't have to do it. So the product owner is like, team, come on, you can do this. The team's like, no, we know what our velocity is. No, the product owner says, I'm telling you, there's no way that that can't be done. I know you can do it. I trust you. I believe in you. But the product owner doesn't have to do the work. Okay, top right, overestimation and underestimation is always going to be an issue that we deal with. It's more likely that we will underestimate than overestimate. And by looking at our velocity from iteration or sprint to sprint, there could be some information that is showing us that we're underestimating, for example, meaning we're thinking the user stories are smaller than they are, and that we can get, a certain number done in a sprint, and then there's a fail. Well, that would mean then that would be discussed during the retrospective, and then we would do something different going forward, which might include doing some re-estimating. Scrum estimating is not necessarily more difficult. However, Scrum exposes bad estimates sooner, which is a good thing. When we were doing our planning poker, you could see that the first time as a team, we didn't know each other. We didn't know everybody's thoughts and concerns. And those kinds of things, get shared and absorbed as a project goes on. And so there's a higher awareness of that. So what we would say is that using estimation techniques, Scrum estimation techniques, might be more inaccurate at the beginning of a project, but they will quickly become very accurate as the project advances forward. Let's see, is there a question here? Can velocity be increased over a period of time for the project? Yes, it can. Now, it's not that it will increase if the team is learning how to work together better and better. You would expect that, if I can just use my mouse here, if we were tracking velocity, so this would be points completed over here. Let me just do PTS for points. And down here is time. And we go from sprint to sprint, right? You would expect that maybe, the first couple of sprints, the team would be learning how to work together, and there would be a steep curve, and then it would kind of flatten out and maybe have, a slow rise going forward as the team emerges as a high-performing team. They get better at their cross-functional behavior. Somebody's sick, the team just keeps chugging along. Other things, oh, sorry. There, I had bumped a thing on my screen there. So the team, learns how to work better together, and their estimates become more accurate, etc. And you would expect a high-performing team to have a result like this for velocity, where there's quick improvement, and then it kind of stabilizes and then begins to tick upwards. Okay, we talked about the cone of uncertainty. Let's talk about ideal time. When we do estimating for user stories, we do it in ideal days. When we do estimating for tasks, we do it in ideal time, which means hours. I think that's on the whiteboard, or it was on the whiteboard. Oh, it was on it. So ideal time is the amount of time it takes to complete a piece of work. But that's based on the notion that the team member or members are available to do just the work with no distractions or anything at all. So assuming that Priyanka could sit down at a keyboard and code for 8 hours without taking a break for lunch, no phone calls, no discussions, no meetings of any kind, just work 8 hours, how much could be done in that 8 hours by Priyanka? That's what ideal time is. But the thing of it is that there is no such thing as somebody being able to spend every minute of every day only doing work. There will be distractions. So it has to be converted into elapsed time. Now, we don't convert it to elapsed time at the user story level, but we do convert it to elapsed time when we are dealing at the task level. And what that looks like is, you know, for each team member, you're going to have to do it separately because some team members have more distractions than others. Some might have other duties that pull them away. Whatever the case may be, you determine how much time in a given day a team member is available to do work. So say it's 5 hours out of 8 for one. Maybe it's 6 hours out of 8 for another. Maybe it's 4 out of 8, but you figure out what it is, and then you take the average, and that average availability is used then to convert ideal time into elapsed time. I should have circled this box here because we talked about this as well. And then I already mentioned this here, only considers actual work time, not the distractions. So that's the concept of ideal time. When it comes to story points, it's different than that. They are a measure of size relative to each other. So we were doing planning poker this morning where we were looking at grapes versus apples, and then we were looking at oranges and what else do we have? Watermelons and coconuts. And we weren't trying to figure out how much time it would take to eat grapes as opposed to how much time it would take to eat a coconut. It's clear that it's going to take longer to eat a coconut because there's more effort involved. So we have a sense that it's going to take more time. But comparing the coconut to our baseline of 2, right, we came up with a baseline of 2 for the smallest user story. We compare eating coconuts to that baseline and we say, okay, you know what, it's going to take more effort to eat the coconut than it is to eat grapes or apples. So you can do it like we did. You can also triangulate. For example, when we did our planning project this morning, or this morning for me rather, at the beginning. Oh, that's not it. That is the daily stand-up. Here it is. If I had said, team, I want you to pick a small user story, a medium user story, and a large user story. And then we would then compare other stories to those 3, and so we would kind of triangulate on it. Let's say that we did, 2 was small. I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. Grapes was small, apples were medium, and coconuts were large. Well, if we then looked at orange and we said, well, you know, orange is smaller than apples but bigger than grapes. So we would know this would fit in between grapes and apples. And so let's say, you know, we had apples at 5 and grapes at 2, then we would say an orange is probably going to be 3. And the values, you know, now I used, in our example, the modified Fibonacci series. What we do in Scrum and Agile, if we're using story points, we're going to use a nonlinear scale for the values. So down at the bottom here, there's the modified Fibonacci sequence. The way the Fibonacci sequence works, by the way, it's the value is the sum of the two on the right. So let me break this right here because this is a modified Fibonacci. So 13 is 5 plus 8. 8 is 3 plus 5. 5 is 2 plus 3, and 3 is 1 plus 2. If we were doing the real Fibonacci series, this wouldn't be 20. It would be 13 plus 8, which would be 21. I don't know why some use modified Fibonacci and others not, but that's just kind of a common thing to do. If you're doing planning poker, you give everybody 7 cards, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and 20. Another nonlinear scale is doubling, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. You typically don't go too far to the left with the values because that either means that you're being too granular or you've got stories that are probably too big and they need to be disaggregated. Now, somebody just chatted here, should some buffer time be included in the actual estimates? Let me answer that question first by going back to ideal time, and then I'm going to come back to story points and answer the question. When we're estimating in ideal time, we don't add a special amount of time that we would call a buffer. We just allow for the distractions and the interruptions, which could look like a buffer, right? You're saying, Priyanka, if based on your duties in the organization and our workday of 8 hours, you're typically available to be doing your project work 5 out of those 8 hours. So when we are converting ideal time to elapsed time, we will be building in extra time based on distractions and interruptions. We would not call it a buffer, but that's essentially what we're doing. Now, when it comes to user stories that we're using story points, it is different. The points are for the entire amount of the work. And why might we need to have some extra time for a user story? Well, it's likely going to be driven by uncertainty. There might be other things that impact it, but that's the main thing. Sorry, team. So when the team is estimating the size of the user story, they will be including in their discussion and estimates any extra time or buffer time that would be needed for that user story to be completed. So do we accommodate uncertainty when we're using story points? Yes, we're looking at the X factor, and if we've got an unstable user story, then we're probably going to say, this is going to be a bigger user story than one that's similar but has a much lesser level of uncertainty. So that's the story points. Let's compare the two. Ideal time uses things like hours and days, which is easier to explain outside the team, right? The suits like things in days and hours. Everybody's estimate may be different, not a bad thing. It's easier to do at the beginning because we're oriented to think about time. And it does kind of shine a light on wasted time. Story points are harder to explain outside the team. The suit says, well, how long is it going to take to do user story 301? And our answer is, well, that's a 10 user story point user story. And the suit's saying, what does that mean? Tell me how long it's going to take. So the suits have to be converted to story points. Now, here's the thing. It's a lot easier to get consensus when we're estimating in story points. And once we get good at it, it's going to be much faster. We have to remember it's not comparable across teams. So, a team working together will have its own kind of system for sizing the stories, and another team that might even be working on the same project will have a whole different scheme. And so if the velocity of one team is 25 and the velocity of another is 50, it doesn't mean that the team with the velocity of 50 is able to do more work than the teams whose velocity is 25. And we did, when we got our day going, we started with a planning poker exercise. And so, we used all of the team members. So we selected the team. The product owner was there to answer any questions. The team discussed each of the story cards and then decided what their vote was going to be. And then everybody voted at once. If there were outliers, they were discussed. And the reasons for that, those variances, those outliers, were then part of the discussion. And then we did another round of voting. And we would keep doing that until we had our estimates converge or we reached consensus on them. Okay, so advantages of planning poker: it's fun, it's quick, it gets the whole team involved, the team understands a little bit about all of the stories, everybody contributes his or her expertise, and the discussion during the estimation provides clarity in the direction approach and even a bit of design. If we were in the same room team and we were doing a planning poker activity like we did at the beginning of our day together, we would be able to, model it a little bit better. Or if we tried to unmute everybody, but you could hear the background noise. I've tried doing it, it doesn't really work. But you get the idea that if the team's discussing and things like that, you would actually get to the point where your estimates would converge and the team would say, okay, this user story size is, whatever it is. Okay, so we need to wrap things up for the day. So we are ending right here. And that means tomorrow when we get together, we're going to be doing slide 20, or starting with that, which is affinity estimating. And let's see, affinity estimating, we go through that. We're going to talk about tracking progress using information radiators. And then we're going to talk about what we do when we find variances between the plan and the actual results, and then we'll have our quiz. Now let's talk about the values of Scrum. Now this is different than pillars. This is values. So there are 5 values for that, and this is something that I want you to memorize. So I'm going to switch my cameras here and go to the whiteboard, and we're going to add to our list oh, wrong color. You can tell I'm a project manager because that would bother me. So the 5 values of Scrum, and there's an acronym. You can see that on the screen, right? C-Force. Okay, so 5 values of Scrum. And C, F-O-R-C. And you kind of know my style here. You don't have to do it this way, whatever works for you, but have some kind of a strategy for memorizing things. It will probably serve you well. So the first C is commitment. The next one, there are 4. F is focus. O is openness. Is that 2 N's or 1? I don't know. Openness. We'll blame it on the marker if it's not right. R is for respect. And the last C is courage. And so there's your little chart right there. And let me just briefly go over these. None of these will be a big surprise here. We've talked about some of them already in one context or another. For commitment, that means the team is going to commit to deliver value to the customer. They're on board, there's the buy-in, all of that's there. Focus, the team is going to focus on the few important things at a time. So we're going to do time boxing. We're not going to do things broadly, specifically focus on a few things at a time. O is openness. That's analogous to the T, transparency, and the pillars, meaning we're going to be completely open in sharing information about the project, our own opinions, our fears, our concerns, etc. R stands for respect, and that's kind of a 360 view. We respect ourselves, we respect others, we respect the concepts that we are using as part of Scrum, and and we respect the other stakeholders as well, 360. And the last C stands for courage, and that's the courage to make commitments even when we're in an uncertain environment. Courage to deal with fear that comes from a failure, courage to share disagreements openly yet respectfully, courage to participate in debating technical approaches, etc. Okay, so now let's go to the Scrum Lifecycle chart, and what I want to do is I want to elaborate on this just a little bit. And I'm going to try and use my mouse to do some additions to this. First of all, we have the product backlog. The product backlog has to be kept current, and we call that grooming. Grooming is adding user stories and removing user stories from the product backlog. Product backlog is the scope of the project. The product owner owns that. The team assists in that effort. Related to grooming is pruning. Pruning the backlog is prioritizing and reprioritizing. So the product backlog is pruned and groomed regularly throughout the course of the project. Now, there is a meeting that takes place right here, which is called the Sprint Planning Meeting. Can I just do SP here? Sprint Planning Meeting. Okay, that is one of the ceremonies or events that takes place in Scrum. In the Sprint Planning Meeting, it is a time-boxed event, and it is time-boxed to 2 hours for each week of the sprint. So in our example here, we have a 30-day sprint. So if we have a 4-week sprint, then our sprint planning meeting will be 8 hours in duration. And two things happen during the sprint planning meeting. The user stories that are going to be included in the sprint are selected, right? They're put into the sprint backlog, which is a subset of the product backlog containing the user stories that are going to be completed during the sprint. And the second thing that happens during the sprint planning meeting is the selected user stories are then disaggregated into tasks and estimated. Once that's done, then the work of the sprint begins. There will be a daily scrum like we did at the beginning of our workday together as our team. And then at the end of the work of the sprint, there will be the sprint review. The sprint review meeting or ceremony is also time-boxed, and it is time-boxed to 1 hour for each week of the sprint. So if we're doing a 4-week sprint, the sprint review meeting would be 4 hours in length. The primary purpose of the review is to showcase and demo the software and get feedback from relevant stakeholders and allow the product owner to say, I accept or I reject the work that has been done. Then, after that, is the sprint retrospective. Now, this is where the team asks and answers 3 questions. What went well, what did not go well, and what are we going to do different going forward regarding the previous sprint that was just completed and the ones that is just coming up. And then the sprint itself will result in working software or value for the customer. And then, of course, everything goes back and repeats for as many sprints as necessary to complete the scope of the project. Let's see. I see a chat here. How similar or different is the product backlog to SRS, Software Requirement Specs document, which is widely used in projects? It's different. And if you will hang on to that question, we're going to have a discussion later on about user stories, and that will help you understand the differences. And we'll get into the user stories that come from the customer and user stories that come from the tech domain, and that will help answer your question. So you okay hanging on to that? Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, so a little bit more detailed view of the Scrum project lifecycle. Now let's talk about a couple other things here. When it comes to a sprint, there are some things that affect the duration of the sprint. So the team is going to have to decide how long each of the sprints are going to be, and things that are a factor include the stability of the product backlog. If the product backlog is changing a great deal, then that's going to argue for shorter durations. Because there's a high level of uncertainty, and so you have a greater amount of control on your project if you have shorter sprints. Now, on the other hand, another factor is the cost of iterating. Every time we do a sprint, there are costs associated with the sprint planning meeting, the sprint review, the sprint retrospective, right? People show up to those meetings, you got to pay them, and excuse me. So there is an overhead cost to actually doing sprints. The goal of the sprint is working software. At the end product should be near releasable or potentially shippable. Now, there might be working software that the product owner isn't going to want to release, maybe because it, as a standalone component of working software for the system, doesn't create any value or any usability for end users, and maybe you wait till the end of a release before you release everything. But the idea is it's working software, and it could be released if the customer wanted to do that. Sorry, I just dropped something. I see a question there. I will circle back to your question in just a sec. The sprint duration and deliverables do not change once the team has committed. This is another one of those things that has to be viewed as absolute when we're doing Scrum. So if we say that we're going to do a 2-week sprint and we select 5 user stories based on our velocity or capacity, once that decision has been made, the duration of the sprint does not change, and we do not add or remove any user stories. Now, it could be possible for the product owner to cancel a sprint, but that would be extreme. That would be because there is such a major change to the product backlog that the work of the current sprint is going to be completely irrelevant. You don't change the sprint, you cancel the sprint. And then the bottom one here, the sprint begins with planning and ends with review and a retrospective. And there was a question here, are there any issues with combining the retrospective and the planning ceremonies? And the answer to that is yes. Now, could they be combined depending on the environment? The answer is yes. And the way we would arrive at whether or not it would make sense is who's going to be participating. But they would be separate agendas. So the agenda for the retrospective is what went well, what did not go well, what are we going to do different? And the mandatory participants for that meeting are the team, the Scrum team. Is the Scrum Master going to be there? Likely as a facilitator. Is the product owner going to be there? Maybe, maybe not. If the product owner is there, the product owner could maybe answer questions and help clarify. But the product owner does not weigh in on what went well, what did not go well, and what are we going to do differently. That is all owned by the team. In the planning meeting, the product owner has to be there, and the product owner is the main driver of that meeting. The product owner is talking about or dealing with the priority of the user stories. The team's weighing in. Maybe there's some dependencies that need to be considered, but the product owner has to make the hard decisions with regards to what's going to be done in the next sprint based on the constraints from the team, like velocity and technology and sequencing and things like that. So I kind of answered that from a real-world point of view. Yes, it could be. It's not desirable. On the test, they are completely separate. Did I get you there? I'll keep my eye on the chat box, make sure I got that answered well enough for you, and let's move ahead. Okay, the sprint planning meeting. This is looking right down here. This is conducted at the beginning of a new sprint. It's attended by the team, the product owner, and the Scrum Master. And there are two approaches to deciding what's going to be included in the sprint. It can be based on commitment, and it can also be based on velocity. And the goal here is to get team buy-in, make sure that there is clarity between the team and the product owner as to what the definition of done looks like for the user stories that are going to be included in the sprint. And, of course, it should be realistic and achievable. And, there can be a little bit of an issue where you've got, a well-meaning product owner that's driving really hard, and the team says, we can do these sprints, and the product owner is saying, no, come on, you got to do at least one more. I got to have this one in this sprint. You could get a question like that, and it might be, what would the Scrum Master do if you had a dominant product owner that's trying to persuade the team to do more than the team thinks it can do? And that's where the Scrum Master comes in. The Scrum Master plays the role of the mentor, the coach, and assisting in the resolution of those kinds of issues without deciding. The Scrum Master is not a decider. The team decides when it comes to how, and the product owner decides when it comes to what. Okay, the Scrum meeting, daily Scrum, we've talked about it, right? The entire team attends the meeting. Could the product owner be there? Yes. Does the product owner need to be there? No. Sometimes the product owner can be, an impediment to the meeting, but would be welcome. But if the product owner started asking questions or became the focus of questions being asked, the Scrum Master would have to help facilitate a change, because that would not be effective for the daily Scrum. Duration, 15 minutes. We talked about that. And the agenda. What did I do yesterday? What am I going to do today? And what are my impediments? The sprint review. Now, who attends? It's going to be the team, the product owner, the Scrum Master, and potentially others. So optionally, others, that we would want to get feedback from would be end users, operations folks, the suits. All of those would be welcome depending on the relevance of the software that's being demoed and being subject to the acceptance testing and the product owner, giving the thumbs up or the thumbs down when it comes to acceptance. The duration for this, we mentioned this before, it's not just a flat 2 hours, it's 1 hour per week. So if you did a 4-week sprint, you would plan on the review being a maximum of 4 hours in duration. The agenda is to demo the completed software, get feedback, and then see where we are when it comes to the release plan. The retrospective, who is there? It's attended by the team. And I would modify this slightly, and I would say this is the mandatory group that needs to be there. Optionally, the Scrum Master would be there. Potentially, you could have an external facilitator. The role of the Scrum Master would be the facilitator. Now, a good Scrum Master, being a facilitator in a retrospective, would have some knowledge of control charts, the 5 whys, Ishikawa diagrams, things like that. And although the Scrum Master would not be participating in the actual use of the tools, the Scrum Master would be facilitating the effective use of those tools. When it comes to duration, the rule is 45 minutes for each week. Ooh, that was a good 4. That was kind of a lousy 5. So if you had a 2-week sprint, then you would have an hour and a half retrospective max. And what's the purpose? There's the agenda for the retrospective, 3 questions. What worked well? What did not go well? What are we going to do different? And it's not just a chat session. Well, that would be part of it. You will use tools and techniques, like some that I mentioned, control charts, Ishikawa diagrams, 5 whys. There's a number of things that you might use in order to surface assignable causes for issues so that we could then come up with a resolution to those. This is where continuous improvement is going to happen. Continuous improvement is the result of other things, but this is the main thing. And if you were to get a question about the relevance or the necessity of retrospectives, there is no equivocation. You do a retrospective after every sprint. If you don't do a then there's no improvement. Things just stay static. Okay, so we talked about the 4 main ceremonies, right, in a Scrum project. Sprint planning, you with me? Daily stand-up, the sprint review, and then the sprint retrospective. All considered mandatory for effectively doing Scrum. And not doing them or one of them would be considered a fail. Okay, artifacts that we use when it comes to Scrum. We've talked about the product backlog. We talked about the sprint backlog. There's also a release backlog. Depending on the size of the project, it might be advisable to group user stories into releases. If you have a product roadmap, your releases would line up for that. For example, I've got a real-life project that I'm working on, and my product roadmap is got 3 versions. It's a website. The first version is free. The second version includes a membership component, and the third version includes a referral commission portion to it. And so I will then do 3 releases. I'll have all the user stories that will result in version 1, all the user stories that result in version 2. So that's what the release backlog is. And so if you look at it in sequence, the product backlog is the overall scope of the project. The release backlog is a subset of the product backlog, and then the sprint backlog would be a subset of the release backlog. The product backlog might look something like this. It's a list of user stories that are written by the product owner and are going to be developed by the team members. And we had a product backlog for the thing that we did this morning, right? So here's another example of a product backlog. This is more of a list. It just has the title. There would be a user story card for each of the items in the product backlog. But the idea would be it would be prioritized. There could be user stories that are added or removed depending on what the product owner wants. Product owner owns the product backlog. That's a given. Does the product owner create all the user stories for the product backlog in isolation? No, absolutely not, because there are technical considerations that the product owner might not even consider. The product owner's perspective is more the customer side, the end user side, and so the product owner might not even think of things like security or architecture-related things, and there might even be user stories that come from the technical domain that need to be developed before some of the product owner's user stories. Another artifact is the definition of done. The definition of done is primarily a checklist. And this is what forms the agreement between the product owner and the team as to when we consider something completely done. And if we look down here, it's I'm looking for my cursor. It says here, it's usually prepared by the Scrum Master in consultation with the team. That is, I would modify this slightly. The definition of done is really driven by the team. The Scrum Master is never a decision maker. If you have a Scrum Master that's saying we have to have this in the definition of done, then that's an infringement on the empowerment of the team. I agree that the Scrum Master is a part of the effort to develop the definition of done, but I would kind of flip that. The Scrum Master is the facilitator. It's the team that still owns that. So now, is the product owner involved in this? Absolutely, because the product owner is involved in defining the story and what a fully implemented story looks like. So here's a list, a short list of what a definition of done could look like. The story has been fully implemented or the code completed as described. Automated unit tests have been developed with at least 80% code coverage. It could be more than that. This is just an example. Automated unit tests and acceptance tests of the story are passing. No severity, has 1 or 2 defects. And then high priority test cases have been automated and added to the regression suite. The definition of done, we point out, is likely to evolve as the team's maturity increases as the project advances.
There are 3 distinct roles in Scrum: the Scrum Master, the product owner, and the development team. The Scrum Master assists both the development team and the product owner. The Scrum Master works with the product owner to maximize return on investment. The Scrum Master empowers the development team by fostering creativity, removing impediments, and coaching and mentoring as appropriate. The product owner is responsible for project success by defining the project vision, requirements, and priorities. The product owner has to resist the temptation to manage the team or add more important work after a sprint has begun. The product owner has to be willing to make the hard choices during sprint planning. The development team is comprised of 5 to 9 members with a mix of roles and has the autonomy to self-organize and choose how best to meet the goals of the product owner and is responsible for the same. A Scrum Master is a skilled servant leader. A Scrum Master has very little formal authority. However, he or she is expected to assist the team achieve the intended outcomes without interfering with the team's autonomy. The Scrum Master facilitates the Scrum ceremonies such as sprint planning, daily stand-up, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. The Scrum Master removes obstacles or impediments faced by the team. The Scrum Master is also a process coach and mentor. The Scrum Master must not be a line manager of the team. The Scrum Master is not to be a taskmaster either. The Scrum Master is not a technical or design authority, nor is he or she a decision maker for the team. Throughout the course of the project, the Scrum Master must not do anything to rob the team of its empowerment and ability to self-organize. Let's talk about the attributes of a Scrum Master. Scrum Masters need to exhibit responsibility. Even though they are not solely accountable for the team's output, they will consider it their responsibility to remove anything that impacts the team's productivity. They will try to enable the team to do the best that it can. They are humble. They will work in the background and let the team take all the glory. They will use we statements and seldom use any I statements. They are able to set aside their ego and shower all their attention on the team. They are by nature collaborative. They will encourage the team to have conversations among each other and with other stakeholders outside the team. They will nudge all the right people into getting involved and work together in trying to solve problems. They are committed to the team cause. Even if being a Scrum Master is a part-time task for them, they will give the highest priority to the team's needs. Hence, the Scrum Master's work allocation, especially if they are part-time, needs to take this into consideration. They are able to influence. They are naturally good communicators and able to convince others to adopt different approaches. They apply various techniques to mobilize organizational resources when required, walk the political tightrope when required, and in general do whatever it takes to get the team the assistance it needs. They are knowledgeable. It is clear that as process coaches for the team, Scrum Masters need to be experts in the method. They may not be the technical or domain experts. However, they are knowledgeable enough to be able to have productive conversations about the project being done by the team. Tasks for the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is a crucial role, and it is important for you to be able to be clear about exactly how the Scrum Master serves the team. Scrum Masters are servant leaders. This means that they put the team before themselves and assist the team. For example, they set up and ensure that the Scrum ceremonies are effectively carried out. They ensure that there is smooth flow of information within and outside the team, and that there is a spirit of collaboration in decision-making and problem-solving. Scrum Masters must make it their mission to resolve issues that hinder team progress. It doesn't matter what the nature of the issue is, a Scrum Master needs to mobilize the right resources within the organization to resolve those issues in a timely manner and escalate promptly if that does not happen. We need to understand that in the short duration of a sprint, even a few hours of being stuck can make the difference between a successful and unsuccessful sprint. Scrum Masters protect the team. They ensure that the team is not disturbed or asked to deviate from their commitments. If pressure mounts due to unreasonable expectations, they will step in and push back on the team's behalf. They will also play the role of peacemaker when conflict arises by encouraging the parties to focus on the issue, discuss the issue with an open mind, and resolve the conflict. Finally, Scrum Masters are the process coaches of the team. They use their understanding of Agile methods, and Scrum in particular, to guide the team through the do's and don'ts of Scrum. They ensure that the team stays true to the principles of Agile development. Scrum Master roles, Scrum teams. Before we discuss the role of a developer on a Scrum team, let's talk about the desirable characteristics of Scrum teams. They should be small and nimble. Team size should be no less than 3 and no more than 9. So that would be 6 plus or minus 3. Exceptions are possible, but uncommon. The small attribute makes the team nimble and improves productivity. It avoids the phenomenon Mike Cohn calls social loafing, and instead produces focus on work. The team size should be just large enough that the team members are able to produce and showcase a significant increment of work at the end of each sprint. Sprint after sprint. Self-sufficient and cross-functional. For example, if a team needs user interface development skills, database expertise, and service expertise, all of those skills must be present on the team. Ideally, team members are generalizing specialists. Team members should not only be an expert or a specialist at one aspect of the development effort, but should also have enough skills and knowledge to fill in other roles as necessary. For example, if you are a UI developer, you should be able to don the hat of a services developer if needed. If a large team is to be split up into smaller Scrum teams, Scrum favors feature teams over component teams. Autonomous and self-organizing. Teams choose for themselves how they are going to organize and meet the goals of the product owner. No one gets to dictate to the team how to get their work done. The team decides, in collaboration with the product owner, the project direction, and the pros and cons of different approaches. Let's talk about some key decision points or factors to consider when assembling Scrum teams. Feature teams over component teams. The first issue is whether it's best to align team members based on features or components. Scrum favors feature teams over component teams. For example, it's best to avoid putting all of the UI developers together and all of the API or services developers together. Why? Because each feature or user story will require both the UI and services or API. Organizing based on components will reduce the incentive to collaborate. The only reason component teams may be justified would be if the components are likely to be used by multiple other teams. Assemble the right people. It's important to get the right mix of people together for the team, the right level of technical and domain expertise. Teams will naturally have both senior and junior level developers. This works perfectly as there will be stuff that is more appropriate for the junior developers and stuff that is not. Also, one of the risks of a small team is that the team may miss out on broader perspective and dissenting views. One way to work around this is to deliberately favor diversity in all aspects: gender, ethnicity, personality traits, etc. It may take some time for the team to advance through the storming stage of team development and develop the trust necessary to work effectively together, but it can be done. Once a team has been formed, it's best to preserve and assign whole teams rather than individuals to projects. It's best to avoid assigning team members to multiple projects at the same time. Distributed team. A distributed team may be unavoidable. Those based at the same geographical location should be co-located in the same team room. And technology, processes, and ground rules should be put in place to overcome the disadvantages of all team members not being co-located. Plotting team size and productivity will likely result in an S-curve. You can see here that a team can actually be too small or too large. Remember, the sweet spot is 6 plus or minus 3.
Think of Scrum as a lightweight framework that utilizes principles and practices that assist teams in delivering working software in short cycles to the customer, enabling rapid feedback, continuous improvement, and quick response to change. It promotes delivering value, as in working software to the customer, in an incremental and iterative way. It is not a process or technique for developing software. Rather, it is a framework within which various processes, techniques, and practices are employed. In Scrum, the iterations that deliver working software to the customer are called sprints. In each iteration, or sprint, results in potentially shippable software.
This slide is a graphical representation of an Agile project using Scrum. Starting at the left, you can see that the product owner owns the product backlog and in collaboration with the team develops the user stories or requirements for the project. The product backlog is prioritized, with the higher priority items occupying the top of the product backlog. In collaboration with the product owner, the team decides how to group the user stories into releases based on the product roadmap. Once the release planning has been completed, the user stories are then selected for a sprint. The duration of the sprint is going to be 2 to 4 weeks. Once the sprint backlog has been determined, the team then disaggregates each user story into tasks. During each sprint, the user stories are developed. As the code is written, it is integrated into the system, and daily scrums are held. At the end of a sprint, there is a sprint review where the working software is demonstrated and presented to the customer for acceptance. The team then conducts a sprint retrospective. During the retrospective, the team looks at primarily 3 things: what went well, what did not go well, and what should be done differently going forward. The team's velocity is then updated, as are the information radiators, which transparently display the status and progress of the project, and then the cycle repeats itself until the project is complete. A sprint is an iteration in Scrum. At the beginning of a project, the Scrum team determines the duration of sprints for the project. Most sprints are going to be 2 to 4 weeks in duration. Factors affecting sprint duration include the stability of the product backlog. Once a sprint has begun, the duration is never changed, nor are any user stories added or removed. Therefore, if many changes are expected, a shorter sprint duration would be best. However, if the product backlog is relatively stable, a longer sprint duration may be appropriate. Overhead. There are overhead costs associated with each sprint. For example, every sprint is going to have a sprint planning meeting, a sprint review, and a sprint retrospective. If a team has been able to lower these overhead costs by automated testing, continuous integration, etc., these costs can be absorbed more easily, making shorter sprints more desirable. However, if these overhead costs remain high, the team may need to use longer duration sprints. A team may be tempted to extend the duration of sprints in an effort to hide their inefficiencies. Remember, Agile projects favor shorter duration sprints, and it is the Scrum Master's responsibility to coach and mentor the team so it can reduce waste, irregularities, and overuse and make the sprint shorter. The goal of a sprint is to deliver working software. At the conclusion of each sprint, the team should be able to deliver near-releasable or potentially shippable software. This is not easy, especially for an existing product with a lot of legacy features, but it can be done with the right technical practices and mature development processes. Once the sprint duration has been determined and the user stories for the sprint have been selected, the duration of the sprint cannot be altered, nor can any user stories be added or removed. The sprint will end at the appointed time, irrespective of whether the team has met the sprint goals or not. This allows for effective continuous improvement. If the team is unable to deliver the working software as planned, the team will have to figure out why that happened and then make changes to improve going forward. The product owner may choose to cancel or terminate a sprint in specific situations. For example, a significant change in priorities or a mid-course correction may render the current sprint backlog invalid. Given that we are only talking about a couple of weeks of work, the cancellation of a sprint would be an extremely rare event. A sprint will begin with a sprint planning meeting and end with a sprint review and retrospective. There are 3 backlogs used in Scrum: the product backlog, the release backlog, and the sprint backlog. The product backlog is the master container of all the user stories for the project. The product backlog is continually pruned or prioritized so that maximum value is delivered to the customer. The release backlog is a subset of the product backlog. Releases support the product roadmap, and each release is populated with user stories necessary for that release. The sprint backlog is a subset of the release backlog and contains the user stories to be developed in the sprint. As we said, the product backlog contains the user stories for the entire project, and it is the responsibility of the product owner. User stories are features, functions, or requirements that deliver value to the customer. However, the product backlog will also have to contain technical or non-functional user stories necessary for the system to work properly. The product backlog may also include risk or defect-related user stories. The product owner is responsible for keeping the product backlog current and up to date. This is accomplished by pruning the backlog, which is prioritizing and reprioritizing. The product backlog must also be continually groomed. This is the process of adding and removing user stories based on the needs and desires of the customer. There are 4 Scrum ceremonies: the sprint planning meeting, the daily Scrum, the sprint review, and the sprint retrospective. Let's take a detailed look at each of these ceremonies. The sprint planning meeting is time-boxed at 2 hours for each week of the sprint. If the sprint is going to be 2 weeks in duration, then the time box will be 4 hours. If the sprint is going to be 4 weeks in duration, then the time box for the sprint planning meeting will be 8 hours. It should be attended by the complete Scrum team, including all roles. The most important aspects of this meeting are the team's capacity and the definition of done. There are 2 approaches to selecting user stories for a sprint. One is based on the velocity of the team, the other is commitment driven. Team buy-in is critical, and the goals of the sprint should be clearly understood, and the desired outcomes should be clearly articulated with the definition of done. Then there's the daily Scrum. The time box for the daily Scrum is 15 minutes, regardless of the duration of the sprint length. The entire Scrum team, including all roles, should attend the daily Scrum. Each development team member individually answers 3 questions. What did I do yesterday? What am I going to do today? And what are my impediments? This is how the team members coordinate their work, and the Scrum Master learns of the impediments he or she should be taking care of. The sprint review takes place at the end of the sprint and is time-boxed at 1 hour for each week of the sprint. So if the sprint were 4 weeks in duration, the sprint review meeting would be 4 hours. It should be attended by the complete Scrum team, including all roles, plus any other stakeholders who are interested in project success. The purpose of the review is to demonstrate working software and obtain and assess feedback. Feedback may range from full acceptance of the completed software to complete rejection. The sprint retrospective takes place after the conclusion of the sprint review and is time-boxed at 45 minutes for each week of the sprint. So if the sprint has 2 weeks in duration, then the retrospective would be 1.5 hours in length. It should be attended by the complete Scrum team, including all roles. However, the product owner's attendance is considered optional. During the retrospective, the team answers 4 questions. What worked well? What did not work well? What should be done differently? And what still puzzles us? One or several problem detection techniques may be used in the retrospectives, and this ceremony is a vital part of continuous improvement. At the conclusion of the retrospective, the team's velocity and the project's information radiators are updated. Then the next sprint planning meeting takes place, and this cycle continues until the project is complete. The definition of done is an important artifact for a Scrum team. It is the primary reporting mechanism for team members, and there may be a different definition of done at various levels. Definition of done for a feature or user story. The definition of done for a sprint, and the definition of done for a release. It's really just a checklist of activities that add verifiable and demonstrable value to the product. It's created by the Scrum Master in consultation with the team. A sample list of the items for the definition of done criteria is given here. The story is fully implemented or code completed as described. Automated unit tests have been developed with at least 80% code coverage. Automated unit tests and acceptance tests in the story are passing. High priority test cases have been automated and added to the regression suite. Note, this is only meant to be an example. Each team's definition of done will vary slightly depending on the maturity of the team and the specific situation of the team.
The product team has taken up a new project called Weathermaster. The team is planning to move to Scrum Methodology, and this is an outline of its first Scrum meeting. Time boxed to 15 minutes, Rick is the Scrum Master of this meeting, where the team members discuss what they did yesterday, their plans for today, and the impediments they faced. All team members are standing up, including Todd, who's joined the meeting via video chat. Rick holds the meeting near a Scrum board. Angela, the product owner, is absent. Rick reiterates that all discussions would be parked until after the Scrum meeting and encourages his team to keep the meeting short. People can chime in to resolve obstacles.
Hi team, welcome to the daily stand-up meeting for the product team on Project Weathermaster. We are in Sprint 1 and today is the second day. As we are planning to transition to Scrum Methodology, I hope you will find this daily stand-up meeting helpful. In this meeting, you will provide information about what you did yesterday, what you plan to do today, and what challenges you faced. I think everyone's here. Let's start.
I don't see Angela. Shouldn't she be here?
I did add Angela as an optional attendee to this meeting, and since she hasn't showed up, we don't have to wait for her, Susan.
Scrum doesn't provide a specific yes or no about the product owner's participation in the daily Scrum. The PO's primary role is to provide direction and clarify requirements and priorities. Since we don't always discuss those in detail at this meeting, the PO is not required to be here. If the POs want to attend, they are generally in listen-only mode for the duration of the meeting. They can use the information gathered during the meeting for separate offline conversations.
What about Todd? He works from his home office, right?
Todd will be a part of the meeting through video chat. It is important that we include every team member in the meeting. Hi Todd, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Am I audible?
Yes, Todd. Team, let's all stand up for the meeting.
Why don't you go first, Aaron?
Yesterday, I was working on creating the mock objects to mask the database calls from the unit tests. The difficulty with this approach is that our server-side logic is so dependent on the metadata that writing a true mock is a mammoth exercise. There are decisions that are taken during runtime based on the data. Some of the stored procedure calls are also made based on the values returned through inline queries that are also embedded in the code. I was debugging the code until about 9 p.m., but for the life of me, I couldn't figure this out.
Aaron, could we request you to be concise when you provide an update? If you think some of the details you describe might be interesting to others, why don't you write a wiki page on it and share the link? So, getting back to your update, did you finish the task yesterday?
No, it turned out to be much more complex than I had imagined. I'll continue to work on it today and see if I can figure out an XML structure to mock the schema and hard-code some return values. But I am really stuck as far as the inline queries are concerned.
I know what you're talking about. There is a reason why the inline queries are there in the code. This is mainly for performance reasons when the overheads of making a procedure call based on a metadata value and then processing the...
Sorry for the interruption again, guys. This is a really great conversation. May I suggest we write this issue in the parking lot?
I'm not sure what you mean by that, Rick.
Let me explain. What Aaron just brought up is a blocking issue. Team members should bring these up during the daily scrum so that everybody knows that one of the team members is stuck. However, the daily scrum is not necessarily the meeting where solutions to every obstacle can or should be found. It looks like Mary knows a thing or two about the issue that Aaron has brought up. Let's jot this down as a parking lot topic. This means the team can have offline conversations after the daily scrum to track it down. I'm also going to make a note that we'll track the impediment Aaron faced daily until it is removed. You should let me know if I can help in any way, right? Aaron, is there anything else you would like to say?
No, I am done. Thanks.
Yesterday I worked on developing the wizards for bulk order creation. I'm almost done. Today I need to write code to handle some of the exception scenarios before I can get them over to Susan for testing. That's it for me, I guess.
Did you forget to mention any impediments?
Not really an impediment at present, but I would like to mention that my computer probably needs to be upgraded with more RAM. It has been slow for the past few weeks.
Okay, I wrote up some scenarios to test the bulk order wizard. I'm looking to get my hands on the code as soon as Mary is done. Today, I'm also hoping to complete the company order testing that has been pending for a while. I'm okay for the moment, but I do have one question. Shouldn't we all be updating the task board as we speak?
We could. It is up to you guys if you think you want to do this during the meeting. If you ask my opinion, we should update the board as soon as we are ready to move the tasks and not wait for the meeting. This will ensure that the board is always up to date and also that we use the meeting time to focus on the conversations.
That's a great point, Rick. I can't see the board very well from here anyway, so maybe we should find a way to create an electronic version of it too at some point.
Great point, Todd. Why don't you go next with your updates?
All right. Hey, Rick, would you like to know about my work on the advertising module first or the integration server?
Whatever the team decides is fine with me. Remember, this is really your meeting, and I'm only here to facilitate and ensure we get the most out of this meeting.
Alright then, I guess I'll start with the integration server. I would like to inform everybody that I managed to set up the integration server that we can use as a sandbox to test the code before checking it in source control. I'll send everybody a link with some instructions and credentials. I have also started looking at the stories for the advertising module. It looks like there are a lot of open statements in the stories that I don't really understand. I guess I should have been paying more attention during the sprint planning. I really need to have a conversation with Angela about this. That is my main impediment right now. I sent her an email but haven't received a response yet.
I don't have anything new to add today. I'm almost through with setting up our project on the freeware tool that I downloaded yesterday. I'll show you guys a demo in the meeting I set up later today. I'll try to chase down some of these parking lot items. Anything else before we close the meeting? All right, that's it for today. Have a great day.
Do you have a moment to chat about the inline queries real quick?
The purpose of a Scrum meeting is to keep the team members updated and resolve any impediments. It's an ideal way to kickstart the day on a positive note. The Scrum Master reinforces the sense of the self-managing team, facilitates communication between team members, brings the team's focus back to what's important, and supports improvement.
So before we dive into the differences between Scrum and Kanban, let's have a look at what exactly Scrum is. Scrum is a simple agile project management framework that is used by organizations to help teams collaborate, handle unpredictability and complex projects or products while ensuring the products delivered are of the highest value. It describes a set of meetings, tools, and roles that enable teams to work in sync and help them structure themselves and manage their work. Scrum is one of those things that's really easy to understand but very difficult to master. And although Scrum is seen to be used generally by software development teams, its principles and themes are pretty universal and can be used with just about all kinds of teamwork. With Scrum, teams are able to learn from their experiences, what worked out, what didn't, and things like that. They're also able to organize themselves to handle their problems effectively and basically improve themselves by reflecting on them. So how does Scrum work? Here we have the first component, the product backlog. The product backlog consists of a list of tasks that need to be completed so that the goals of the stakeholders are achieved. Then the team decides what tasks from the product backlog they want to take up and deliver in a 2 to 4 week period called sprint, hence the name sprint planning. Next, the tasks that were discussed in the previous phase are added to the sprint backlog. This is a set of tasks which will be focused on in the ongoing sprint. Following this, the Scrum team, which is usually 5 to 9 members strong, will work on these tasks. Now they also have regular Scrum meetings where they talk about their victories, the issues they face, and what they plan to do in the next 24 hours. And then they have the sprint review. The sprint review is a meeting during which the team shows what they accomplished during the sprint. Now during this time, questions are asked, observations, feedback, and suggestions are made. The product owner also gets feedback for upcoming sprints from stakeholders. They also have a sprint retrospective. Now during this session, past mistakes, potential issues, and new ways to handle them are identified. Data from here is incorporated into the new sprint plan. The final step is increment. Here, a workable and usable output is provided to the stakeholders. So now that we know how Scrum works, let's have a look at Kanban. Kanban comes from the Japanese word kanban, which literally means signboard. Like Scrum, Kanban is a popular agile framework that is a visual system by which the work can be managed with ease as it progresses. Kanban uses something known as the Kanban board to make these things possible. With this, you can easily identify bottlenecks and then fix them cost effectively at optimal speeds. The main focus with Kanban is transparency. Since everything related to the tasks are on the board, everyone can keep themselves updated. It also ensures that teams focus on their current tasks until they're done. This limits the amount of work that's in progress. So on the Kanban board, work is divided into smaller, more manageable pieces. The work that's needed to be done is written on a note or card and placed on a board. Columns on the board help represent where each item is, with respect to the workflow. Now let's have a look at what these are in detail. Let's find out how Kanban works. Now the board consists of 3 major components. There's the to-do list, which represents items that need to be completed. the ongoing column, which represents items that are being currently worked on, and the completed or the done column. Now these represent tasks or items that have already been completed. Now, although this is a physical representation of the board, several organizations use software versions of the board that replaces the sticky notes with cards that can be moved from one column to another as work progresses. Now, an example of such a software is Trello. So if you want to learn more about Trello, you can check out the link I'll be adding to the live chat in a moment. At this point, you guys must have realized how similar these two frameworks sound. So let's run through some more of their similarities. Let's find out how they are similar. Firstly, they both have principles of lean and agile, which means reduction of waste, and both of them are time-boxed and iterative approaches that enable product delivery in an incremental manner. Both these frameworks aim to reduce the amount of work in progress. This forces the teams to ensure that they focus on a smaller set of tasks. This also makes blockers and bottlenecks a little more visible. In both cases, the work is divided into smaller, more manageable units. Both of these frameworks use pull scheduling. Now this means that products are only built based on demand rather than forecasts. Transparency plays a major role in both these frameworks by helping them drive process improvement. And in both cases, the release plan is continuously optimized. And finally, both these methods aim to deliver releasable software often and earlier than expected. So now that we've reached midway, let me ask you guys a question. Do you guys use Scrum or Kanban in your workplace, or do you use these software for personal reasons? What exactly do you use these for? Let me know in the live chat. Now let's have a look at how these two frameworks are different from one another. Firstly, let's have a look at cadence. Cadence refers to the amount of time in a sprint or before a release. So when it comes to Scrum, the entire project is divided into time-constrained iterations, that is, into smaller, manageable units. But when it comes to Kanban, it's event-driven. The next criteria we're going to have a look at is release methodology. In Scrum, releases take place after each sprint, which usually takes 2 to 4 weeks to complete. For Kanban, releases take place in the form of continuous delivery. They happen in such a way that changes like new features, configuration changes, bug fixes, and experiments get to the users in a safe, quick, and sustainable manner. Next up, let's have a look at how changes are addressed in both these frameworks. In Scrum, no change can be made while the sprint is in progress. Once it's complete, changes can be considered in the sprint plan and then added to the sprint backlog. With Kanban, changes can be made at any time and incorporated into the workflow. Now, let's consider the metric that's being measured. In Scrum, for planning and process improvement, velocity, which is the measure of the work that can be completed by a team in a sprint, is the key metric. In Kanban, lead time is the key metric. This represents the period of time between a new task's appearance in your workflow and its final departure from the system. Next, let's have a look at how teams work in these frameworks. In Scrum, you need a cross-functional team to achieve your goals in a sprint. In Kanban, cross-functional teams are optional, but specialized teams that focus on particular aspects of the workflow are required. Now let's talk about new additions. In Scrum, just like handling changes, you can't add any items between a sprint or an iteration. In Kanban, new items can be added to the board as long as there's capacity available for it. Now let's have a look at the job roles within these frameworks. Scrum has three major job roles: Product Owner, Scrum Master, and Scrum Team. With Kanban, you don't have any specific job roles. Now, let's talk about representation. Or moreover, let's talk about how data can be represented. With Scrum, the board needs to be reset once a particular sprint is complete. With Kanban, the board stays persistent throughout the entirety of the project. And finally, let's have a look at project length. With Scrum, it's better suited for longer projects. And with Kanban, projects that can be completed in a shorter period of time are better.
Introduction to Agile Manifesto. The Agile Manifesto is a seminal document in the field of software development, created in 2001 by 17 software developers who sought to outline a more flexible and efficient approach to project management and development. It emphasizes individuals and interactions, working software, customer collaboration, and responding to change over traditional processes, documentation, contract negotiation, and plan following. This manifesto has since become the foundation for Agile methodologies, promoting a flexible, team-oriented approach that values adaptability and customer satisfaction above rigid adherence to plans. With the manifesto in mind, let's start exploring the four core values of Agile. The four core values of Agile focus on people and results rather than rigid processes, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, prioritizing teamwork and communication above strict adherence to tools and processes. Imagine a team deciding together how to solve a problem instead of just following a manual. It's like choosing a group discussion over filling out forms. Working software over comprehensive documentation, valuing functional software that meets user needs over detailed paperwork. Think of it as cooking a meal that tastes good and serves its purpose, rather than writing a detailed recipe book before the meal is even made. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation, emphasizing ongoing engagement with customers rather than sticking strictly to initial agreements. It's like working with a home builder who listens and adapts to your changing needs during construction instead of sticking strictly to the original plan. Responding to change over following a plan, being open to change and adapting plans as needed instead of rigidly following a set path. Picture a road trip where you're open to taking a more scenic route based on new information rather than sticking to the fastest route Google Maps suggested initially. These values guide the Agile methodology towards flexibility, efficiency, and customer satisfaction. The 12 Principles of Agile Software Development. The 12 Principles of Agile Software Development, as outlined in the Agile Manifesto, advocate for customer satisfaction through early and continuous software delivery. Prioritizes getting a functional product to the customer as soon as possible, then updating it regularly. Example, a team releases a basic version of an app to meet initial user needs, then adds new features based on feedback. Welcoming changing requirements even late in development. It is time-consuming to handle large and complicated work while managing project activities. Therefore, a better strategy is to break the task into manageable, sizable chunks. In addition, it would be simpler for the team members to see possible bottlenecks and deal with delays if the clients were always kept informed. For example, if users need a new feature because their needs have changed, the development team works to incorporate it, even if it wasn't in the original plan. Frequent delivery of working software. According to the Agile methodology, working software is frequently delivered in a shorter amount of time. Team members must consistently raise their performance standards as a result of this iterative process. For example, delivering updates every 2 weeks to continuously improve and adjust the software based on user input. Business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. In order to ensure that the business and development sides of the project can communicate effectively and, more importantly, collaborate, a bridge between them must be built. To facilitate an intellectual exchange that both parties can agree on, make use of the same tools you would have used in managing remote teams. For example, regular meetings between the client and the team to discuss the project's direction and adapt as necessary. Build projects around motivated individuals. Give them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. The project manager must establish a supportive and stimulating environment where team members are free to express their ideas and make recommendations for enhancing the output of the group. This results in a massive improvement in their general performance, eventually aiding the project. For example, allowing a developer to choose their tools or method of working to solve a problem can lead to more innovative and effective solutions. The most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. Efficient communication among the parties concerned is stressed strongly in the Agile Manifesto. Thanks to improvements in communication technologies, it's now simpler. Instead of having a quick conference in the office, all participants can now meet via video conferencing. For example, solving misunderstandings or clarifying requirements through direct discussion rather than through emails or reports. Working software is the primary measure of progress. Delivering a functional product that pleases the consumer is the single determinant that can guarantee success. Before Agile, numerous success metrics decreased the quality of the finished product. For example, a team focuses on delivering a basic but operational piece of software first, rather than ensuring every document is perfect. Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. Burnout will occur if you work on a project for a long time. It's inevitable. Avoid placing too much of a workload on your employees. The value of your project will be affected. So, assemble the best team for the job that will work hard but refrain from overworking themselves and endangering the project's quality. For example, instead of pushing for long hours to meet an unrealistic deadline, the team sets a realistic timeline that allows for steady progress without overtime. Continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. Any agile team's main goal should be to provide value to the client. Therefore, a multi-skilled team that can manage all the project's technical components and offers the chance for continual improvement is crucial. For example, regularly refactoring code to improve its structure without changing its external behavior. Simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. You should avoid adding extraneous complexity to a project if you want to complete it swiftly. You can accomplish this in various ways, including by using agile tools, which eliminate busy work and offer you more significant influence over all project-related decisions. For example, developers decide not to add a feature that only a few users would use, keeping the system more straightforward and easier to maintain. The best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. Simply said, a self-organized workforce with decision-making autonomy would function better since each team member would be responsible for meeting client expectations rather than a lone project manager. For example, a team decides who will work on what tasks based on each member's strengths and current workload rather than having a manager assign tasks. At regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. Agile techniques are constructed on the notion of iteration, where teams consistently enhance their game by learning from their previous wrongdoings. Project managers should inspire team meetings where everyone evaluates their work and discusses how to develop their management and technical skills. For example, at the end of each development cycle, the team needs to discuss what they can change to work more efficiently in the next cycle. With core values and principles in mind, let's have a look at implications of Agile values and principles. The implications of Agile values and principles revolve around fostering a culture of flexibility, collaboration, and continuous improvement. They lead to enhanced adaptability to change, allowing teams and businesses to respond swiftly to market shifts and customer needs. Increased customer satisfaction by prioritizing customer feedback and delivering value early and often. Improved product quality through iterative development and a focus on technical excellence. More efficient and motivated teams due to empowerment and a focus on individuals and interactions. These points underline how adopting Agile can transform organizational workflows and outcomes. Now, let's see some real-world applications of Agile. Innovation in tech. Companies like Spotify utilize Agile to foster innovation, rapidly testing and deploying new features. Adapting to market changes. Netflix applies Agile principles to quickly adapt to user preferences and technological advancements, maintaining its market leader position. Banking sector agility. Banks have adopted Agile to improve their digital services, making customer transactions smoother and more secure. Healthcare efficiency. Agile methodologies help healthcare providers streamline operations and improve patient care through faster, more responsive services. Manufacturing flexibility. Even in manufacturing, Agile enables companies to respond swiftly to market demands and supply chain challenges. And there you have it, folks.
Why product backlog is important? The product backlog is a fundamental component in Agile and Scrum methodologies, serving as a dynamic, prioritized list of features, enhancements, bug fixes, and other changes that are needed to improve a product. Prioritization. The team can prioritize tasks based on the product's requirements and the value they bring to stakeholders. Transparency. The product backlog offers a clear view of upcoming work, ensuring everyone understands the project's direction and goals. Flexibility. It allows for the easy integration of changes and new ideas into the product development process. Focus. With a well-defined list of tasks, the team can concentrate on completing the most valuable ones first. Efficiency. It enables the team to select work from the backlog as they have capacity, optimizing workflow and productivity instead of being overloaded with tasks. Let's understand what is a product backlog in Agile. The product backlog in Agile is like a big to-do list for a project, specifically for those projects managed using Agile methodologies, which are approaches to software development that emphasize flexibility, collaboration, and customer feedback. Imagine you're planning a big party which represents the final product. Your to-do list, the product backlog, includes everything you need to do to make the party happen. This list might include tasks like send out invitations, buy decorations, plan the menu, and so on. Each task is important for the party to be successful. In the context of a software project, this list includes all the features, functions, requirements, enhancements, and fixes that need to be addressed to make the final product meet the customer's needs. These items are typically listed in order of priority, with the most important or urgent items at the top of the list. The team working on the project will regularly review this list, often in a meeting called the Backlog Grooming Session. But what is backlog grooming? Let's understand. What is backlog grooming? Backlog grooming is a term commonly used in agile software development. Imagine you're planning a trip and you have a list of things you want to do or places you want to visit. Your list might include things like booking flights, reserving accommodations, and planning activities. Now, think of this list as your backlog in agile terms. It's a list of tasks or features that need to be completed for a project. Backlog grooming is like going through this list regularly to make sure it's organized, prioritized, and ready to be worked on. Here's how it works. Reviewing and adding items. You start by looking at the items on your list backlog and making sure they're still relevant and needed. If there are new ideas or requirements, you add them to the list. Prioritizing. Not all tasks are equally important. You need to decide which ones should be done first. So, you prioritize the items on your list based on factors like customer needs, project deadlines, or business value. Breaking down tasks. Some items on your list might be big and complex. It's easier to work on smaller, manageable tasks. In backlog grooming, you might break down big tasks into smaller ones so they can be completed more easily. Estimating effort. It's important to have an idea of how much time and effort each task will take. During backlog grooming, you might discuss and estimate the effort required for each item. This helps with planning and resource allocation, ensuring clarity. Everyone involved in the project should have a clear understanding of what each task entails. Backlog grooming provides an opportunity to clarify any doubts or questions about the items on the list. Keeping it up to date. Backlog grooming isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process. You should regularly review and update the backlog as the project progresses and new information becomes available. Alright, so after that, as the project progresses, the team selects items from the top of the product backlog to work on during each development cycle called a sprint. Now, what is sprint? A sprint is a time box period, usually 4 weeks, during which the development team works on a set of items from the product backlog to create a potentially shippable product increment. Sprints provide a focused,
concentrated effort to deliver valuable work within a short time frame. At the beginning of each sprint, the team selects a set of items from the product backlog based on their priority and capacity to form the sprint backlog. They commit to completing these items by the end of the sprint. Once the sprint is over, they review the work and present it to the stakeholders, usually the customer or client, for feedback. All right, now let's understand what's in a product backlog. A product backlog serves as a comprehensive checklist for a project team, outlining all the tasks required to enhance the product's quality. It encompasses various elements: user stories, brief narratives detailing desired features from the perspective of the end user, structured as a type of user, I want an action so that a benefit value. Bugs issues. Any flaws or malfunctions within the product are documented here for resolution. Tasks. These entail specific actions necessary for fulfilling a user story or rectifying a bug. Enhancements. Suggestions for improving the product's functionality or value, not necessarily related to troubleshooting. Technical work. Tasks related to enhancing the product's technical aspects, such as code-based refinement or software component updates. Knowledge acquisition. Activities aimed at empowering the team with essential insights or skills for making informed decisions, such as research or exploration tasks. And there you have it. We've explored the ins and outs of the product backlog in Agile. By understanding its importance and how to manage it through backlog grooming, you're well equipped to steer your projects towards success.
So what is Safe Scrum Master certification? Safe Scrum Master certification is a badge that shows you know your stuff when it comes to Scrum, lean and agile ways of working. It's like a stamp of approval that says you are great at managing agile projects, especially in big companies. To get this certification, you have got to prove you really understand SAFe principles and how to use them in real situations. There's an exam you have to pass called the SAFe SSM exam. It tests what you know about the SAFe framework and how you would handle different challenges. Now let's break it down. Scrum is a way of working where teams tackle big projects in small and manageable steps. Lean is all about being efficient and cutting out waste. And Agile is a mindset that focuses on being flexible and responding quickly to change. SAFe combines all these ideas and adds a layer for working in big organizations. Imagine you're in charge of a project in a big company. You need to make sure everyone on the team knows what you are doing and those things are running smoothly. That's where being a safe Scrum Master comes in handy. You will know how to use Scrum to break down the projects into smaller tasks. You will also use lean principles to keep things moving quickly and efficiently. And you will have that agile mindset to adapt to any changes that comes your way. So getting certified as a safe Scrum Master is like saying, hey, I know my stuff when it comes to managing agile projects in big companies. It's a way to show employees that you have got the skills they need to keep their projects on track and their teams working smoothly. So this was about Safe Scrum Master certification. Now let's understand about the exam pattern. So understanding about the exam pattern. The Safe Scrum Master certification exams follow a specific pattern designed to access your understanding. Here's what you need to know about the exam. So the duration is 90 minutes to complete the exam. Then number of questions. So there will be a total 45 questions. And to pass the exam, you will need to score at least 33 out of 45 questions correctly, which amounts to 73%. Now talking about the competency level, the exam is geared towards individuals at an intermediate competency level. This means you should be proficient and capable of performing tasks with some assistance. Now the question format. Questions for the exam will be either multiple choice question, where you have to choose one answer, or multiple select format, where you can choose 2 or 3 answers. Now, talking about the delivery, the exam is conducted online via a web-based platform. It's a closed book exam, meaning you can't refer to any materials during the test. You'll also not allowed any outside assistance. And remember, it's timed, so manage your time wisely. Now, coming to the main part, that is the cost of the exam. So the cost of the first attempt is included in the course registration fee if you take the exam within 30 days of completing the course. And however, if you need to retake the exam or if you attempt it after the 30-day window, there's a fee for $50 per attempt. So it's like that. Alright, so this was about the exam pattern. Now coming to the career opportunities after certification. So after completing the SAFe Certified Scrum Master certification, you can target a variety of job positions that leverage your knowledge of Agile and Scrum practices. Some of them are Scrum Master, Agile Coach, Product Owner, Project Manager, Program Manager, and Iteration Manager. So these are some of the positions you can opt after doing this certification. Alright, now let's understand how to become a SAFe Certified Scrum Master. So let's divide the procedure or plan into 3 steps. Step 1 is create a proper study plan. So let's understand that first. So preparing for the SAFe Certified Scrum Master exam starts with creating a study plan. This plan outlines what you need to focus on. First, identify the main goals and the important ideas for the exam. Understand the key concepts thoroughly. This helps you prioritize your study time and ensures you cover all the necessary topics to succeed in the exam. So this was about the study plan. Now coming to the next step, which is prepare for SAFe Certified Scrum Master exam. So basically the training part. For preparation purposes, consider enrolling in a SAFe Scrum Master certification course. Over 16 hours of live instructor-led sessions. You will delve into the intricacies of scaled Agile framework, mastering Agile development at a scale, iteration planning, and fostering high-performing teams with a 1-year membership to the SAFe community platform. Access invaluable resources to support your journey. Professionals who pass the SAFe Scrum Master certification exam from Simplilearn will receive SAFe Scrum Master Master Certificate, SAFe Scrum Master Digital Badge for online profiles, and much more. You will get the link to the SAFe Scrum Master certification course by Simplilearn in the comment section below. Alright, now let's talk about the study material thing. So supplement your learning with the official course materials, including the SAFe Certified Scrum Master Guide and additional resources provided by your chosen training provider. As I've mentioned, you can go through the SAFe Scrum Master certification by Simplilearn and you'll get all the resources in that particular training course. Alright, now coming to the next thing, that is the third step, which is mock test. So mock test. Taking mock test is an important part of preparing for the SAFe Certified Scrum Master exam. These practice tests mimic the real exam, helping you get familiar with the format and types of questions. By giving mock tests, you can access your readiness and identify areas where you need more practice. It's a great way to build confidence and improve your chances of success on the actual exam. After that, you can go for test analysis. Analyzing mock tests is crucial for SAFe Certified Scrum Master exam preparation. After taking a mock test, review your answer to understand where you went right and where you made the mistakes. Identifying the patterns in your errors and focus on improving those areas. This should be your goal. So this analysis helps you fine-tune your study plan and strengthens your weak points, increasing your chances of performing well on the actual exam. And the last step would be to go for the exam. So by following these steps and maintaining consistency in your preparation, you can confidently pursue your goal to become a certified SAFe Scrum Master. With a solid study plan, regular mock test, and through analysis, you will be equipped to ace the exam and excel in your Agile career journey.
Why do we need Scrum meeting? Alignment. Ensures everyone is on the same page regarding project goals and progress. Transparency. Promotes transparency by sharing individual accomplishments, plans, and obstacles. Collaboration. Fosters collaboration among team members by identifying dependencies and opportunities for assistance. Adaptation. Allows teams to adapt and adjust their plans based on daily progress and emerging challenges. Efficiency. Helps in identifying and addressing issues early, preventing delays and ensuring smooth project flow. Moving forward, let's dive into advantages of Scrum meeting. Improved communication. Enhances communication among team members by providing a dedicated forum for updates and discussions. Enhanced collaboration. Promotes collaboration and knowledge sharing among team members, leading to better problem solving and decision making. Increased productivity. Enables teams to stay focused and accountable for daily tasks, leading to improved productivity and progress. Quick issue resolution. Facilitates early identification and resolution of obstacles, preventing them from becoming significant impediments to progress. Iterative improvement. Supports iterative improvement by providing regular opportunities for reflection and adaptation. Let's see. Standard questions of Scrum meeting. Question 1. What did you do yesterday? Question 2. What will you do today? Question 3. Are there any obstacles or impediments in your way? Moving forward, let's see. Facilitation and execution in Scrum. Scrum Master's role. Facilitates the meeting, ensuring it stays focused and on track. Time boxing. keeps the meeting short and concise, typically around 15 minutes or less. Adapting format allows teams to modify the format or questions to better suit their needs and context. Staying standing encourages participants to stand during the meeting to maintain focus and keep it brief. Let's conclude this video. Conclusion. Value proposition. The daily Scrum meeting is a valuable tool for Agile teams, promoting alignment, transparency, collaboration, and continuous improvement. Integration with Agile principles. It aligns closely with Agile principles of frequent communication, adaptation, and collaboration, making it an essential practice within Agile methodologies like Scrum. By incorporating these, teams can gain a comprehensive understanding of the purpose, benefits, execution, and continuous improvement aspects of the daily Scrum meeting within the Agile development framework.
So as part of this tutorial, we are going to understand the typical interview questions which would come across when someone faces the interview for any of the roles in the Scrum. So question number 1, what is Scrum? So Scrum is a framework that enables teams to work together. So with Scrum, teams can learn from experiences, self-organize, working on problems, to reflect on their victories and their losses to improve. So this is a simple framework which will provide a better ability and methodology. One can able to handle it better. So Scrum is very well defined, articulated, and this provides a better insights, and capabilities building exercise is very easier, and roles are well defined. So define the roles in Scrum. So what are the typical roles we come across in Scrum? So one of the roles we come across is product owner. So product owner is primarily responsible for maximizing the ROI by determining the product features, prioritizing it into a list, what needs to be focused on for the next sprint, and constantly reprioritizing and refining it. So what happens is, whenever we may require to deliver, it is very important for us to have the requirements clear. What requirements needs to be fulfilled? To fulfill that requirements, the products what is produced should have specific features and functionalities. So product owner will have the list of features and functionalities which needs to be created when product comes out as a result of a project. So product owner owns this, primarily responsible to ensure these list of features are identified and those are prioritized as required. So next role we can think of is Scrum Master, who helps teams learn and apply Scrum to obtain business value. So Scrum Master helps removing impediments. Impediment is anything which can stop things to flow smoothly. So protects them from interface and helps the team to adopt Agile practices. Now Scrum is one of the methodologies for Agile approaches and practices. Now remember, the term Agile itself is not a practice. It refers to indicate that move faster, become flexible, respond to change, be flexible. Now Scrum methodology, especially Scrum Master, should understand this dynamics and ensure the team understands this, and Scrum Master should guide the team to adopt these methodologies and ensure the results are accomplished accordingly. So next role is Scrum team. So Scrum team is a group of individuals who work together to deliver the requirements of the stakeholders. So Scrum team is generally of the size like 5 plus or minus 2 who are self-organizing. So various different capabilities the Scrum team members would have. So each of their capabilities complement to accomplish the results required. So question number 3, what are the responsibilities of the Scrum team? So Scrum team is self-organizing, as I mentioned earlier. So it is a self-organizing team that has 5 to 7 members, and the responsibilities would include the development and delivery of working products during each sprint. Now we are seeing the new terminology sprint. So what is the meaning of this sprint? Now sprint refers to an iteration, a time-boxed iteration which will have a specific deliverables to be accomplished as part of it. So self-organizing team takes that specific working piece, what needs to be delivered. So that is a sprint backlog, we call it as. So from the product backlog, the features, functionalities which needs to be delivered as part of this specific iteration called sprint, time-boxed iteration, and those sprint backlog items are delivered. The output of that sprint would be the features, what is being taken, is a working piece, working product. So to demonstrate ownership and transparency for work assigned to them. So they own it, the entire thing assigned to them, there should be ownership. So ensuring the success of daily Scrum meeting by providing crisp and correct information. So Scrum has one event, there are 5 events basically. So one of the events which happens daily is daily Scrum meeting, where the team comes up with Scrum Master. So they would speak about what is that they have accomplished from the previous stand-up to till now. Is there anything which is stopping them to move forward? So giving the crisp updates, specific summary updates, so that Scrum Master understands the status. So any specific changes or any specific support which are required, Scrum Master would discuss separately with those individuals and get it done. So it should be minimum 15 minutes meeting when we say daily stand-up meeting. So Scrum team collaborate with each of the team members, they work together and they self-organize. So next question, the differentiate between Agile and Scrum. Now it is very essential to understand the terminologies differences. So if we just end up with looking at wrong understanding of each of the terminologies, then explaining will become difficult. So what does it mean by Agile and what it is when it comes to the terminology called Scrum? The term Agile refers to ability to move quickly and easily by becoming more flexible and adaptable. This is what the meaning which gets associated with the term Agile. So many times I have seen people answering Agile is a methodology, Agile is a iterative and increment methodology. And also I think when you search through the popular search engines, you may come across that, which is wrong. So Agile is the terminology which is used to state to move quickly and easily by becoming more flexible and adaptable. This we should keep in mind. So if our question may be like, what are Agile methodologies? Then you can come across like one of the Agile methodologies is Scrum, and you can go on various different methodologies what we have. So Scrum is an Agile methodology. Right, the term Scrum is the name given to the Agile methodology which enables organization to become Agile. Right, so to become Agile, obviously there are various methodologies. Scrum is very popular. So that is the main difference. So further, if you look at Agile Manifesto on 12 principles which acts as guidelines to become Agile. So there is something called Agile Manifesto, 4 points, clearly articulates what needs to be focused on to become Agile. And that is supported through the 12 principles which guides. So Scrum is used in projects where requirements are constantly changing, means I want to become Agile, so I adopt Scrum. So this definitely has to align to Agile Manifesto and take the guidelines, whatever is mentioned in 12 principles of Agile Manifesto. Then looking at leadership perspective, roles perspective. So Manifesto mentions the required collaboration interactions to become Agile. Whereas Scrum defines the roles like the Scrum Master, the product owner, the self-organizing teams, which is cross-functional self-organizing team. So these are the main 3 roles which Scrum defines. Now generally when we say projects, we come across the role like project manager. So do we see such project managers in Scrum? Answer is no, because the Scrum Master who engages with the team regularly, more than management, they focus on doing facilitating role to the Scrum teams so that things can be delivered the way it is required and more flexibility is given to the team to take the calls to accomplish the results. So Scrum Master facilitates, whereas the product owner, as I mentioned earlier, looks at the product backlog and prioritizes and provides what are the features, functionalities needs to be created in the next iterations. So speaking about flexibility, definitely Agile Manifesto mentions the required focus on working software and focusing on changes. So that's the focus, the direction what it provides. So Scrum approaches enables teams to react to changes quickly. The Scrum methodology is made such a way that team understanding that can able to react, and those changes and modifications are made visible to the team. So delivery perspective, Manifesto provides necessary guidelines on frequent delivery of product or software. So Scrum with time-boxed iterations called sprints builds, delivers to the users regularly and upheld Agile principles. That is very important. So delivery here is as per the user's requirement, as per the customer requirements, because when we want to become Agile, customer has to involve very closely, stakeholder has to collaborate. Without that, you cannot become agile. So next point is about collaboration. Agile Manifesto stresses on individual interactions and customer collaborations. So based on this, if you look at in the Scrum, how are they demonstrating this? So there are various events which happens in Scrum. So as I mentioned earlier, we have daily stand-up meetings and other Scrum events like sprint retrospective, sprint reviews, daily stand-up meetings, which happens like sprint planning, which happens regularly. So it becomes a reason for collaboration and everyone to discuss and take the call. So question number 5, what are the main artifacts of the Scrum process? Now product backlog, so which consists of list of new features, changes, which are organization is looking for to bring into the existing features, changes to the existing features, bug fixes, changes to the infrastructure and several other activities to ensure a particular outcome. So product backlog. So then we can speak about sprint backlog, a subset of product backlog. So the sprint backlog contains tasks that the team aims to complete to satisfy the sprint's goals. So set of product backlog things are taken, put into sprint backlog, and those are the features which are supposed to be produced as a result as part of that particular sprint. The team first identifies tasks from the product backlog that need to be delivered to achieve a goal. So these tasks are then added to the sprint backlog. So the team first identifies tasks from product backlog as per the priorities, the list which is prioritized in the product backlog, that is taken, put into sprint backlog, and then those are delivered. So next you can think about product increment. The product increment is the combination of all product backlog tasks completed in the sprint and the value of the increments of previous sprints. The outcome should be in the usable condition even if the product owner doesn't decide to release it. It is very important, each of the increments which comes out so needs to fulfill this. Now question number 6, how are the product and sprint backlog different from one another? Product backlog versus sprint backlog. Let us see a few differences. So product backlog is the list of items that needs to be completed for developing the product, which is the list of all the features functionality, consolidated one. Whereas sprint backlog is the list of items to be completed during each sprint, which are taken from product backlog. The backlog, when it comes to product backlog, the backlog is collected from the customer by product owner and assigned to the team. Whereas in sprint backlog, the teams collects the backlog from the product owner and sets up the time frame for the sprint. So product backlog is specific to end goal, ultimate objective, whereas sprint backlog is specific to that sprint, specific iteration called sprint in Scrum. What is that we are going to produce as part of it? Product backlog is based on customer vision, whereas sprint backlog will vary based on the product vision defined by product owner. So prioritized lists you take from there, product backlog. So product backlog is independent of sprint backlog, whereas sprint backlog is dependent on product backlog. Reason we know already, I explained. So this is the prioritized list of backlogs we take from product backlog and create this specific product as part of sprint, which become sprint backlog. So product backlog refers to until the project is complete, the product owner maintains the product backlog. Whereas sprint backlog, when it comes to sprint backlog, each new sprints as backlogs added by the team as each sprints are initiated. So next question, who is the Scrum Master and what does he or she do? So a Scrum Master promotes and supports the adoption of Scrum in the team. Scrum Master helps everyone to understand the theory, practices, rules and values in the Scrum. So Scrum Master is playing the role of facilitation, enablement, right? So Scrum Master ensures the team follows Scrum values, principles and practices, removes blockages that may hamper the progress of the project, protects the team from being distracted, ensuring the team delivers value during every sprint. So next question, what happens in daily stand-up sessions? So daily stand-up sessions are the discussion which are done daily that takes place and are usually 15 minutes in duration. The objective is to understand what went well, what tasks are completed from the last stand-up session, what tasks are pending, and the obstacles the team was facing. If at all any specific task is not accomplished for certain reasons, so what are stopping them, stopping the team to accomplish that? That needs to be made visible, so that separate meeting can be held to discuss on that and do the necessary corrections by taking proper actions. So the objective of this daily stand-up meeting is to understand the overall scope and status of the project. Further, individual discussion can be taken up after the daily stand-up sessions. As I mentioned earlier, if at all, if you find something is not accomplished as per the plan, now how do we ensure that is corrected? And why is it happening? Is there anything, any support is required by the team to focus on that? So something like that can be checked on. Question number 9, what is Scrum Ban? So Scrum Ban is a development methodology that is a combination of Scrum and Kanban. So this can be used to meet the needs of the team that aims to minimize the batching of work and to adopt a pull-based system. So Kanban is called as pull-based system. So which actually helps in terms of visualizing what work is in progress. And since it is a visualized system, it is visible to everyone. So it works in terms of making people become conscious to take that work and get it closed quickly. So it's also called pull system because work is pulled from that particular list. So when this Kanban approach or methodology or thought is applied in Scrum, we call it as Scrum Ban. So combination of this definitely helps in terms of making that entire journey successful and supports the Scrum methodology. So Scrum Ban includes the structure of Scrum along with the flexibility and visualization of Kanban. So Scrum Ban is used by the teams that need to be structure of Scrum, that has the structure of Scrum and the flexibility of a flow-based method like Kanban. So question number 10, what is Sprint Zero and Spike? So the term Sprint Zero refers to the short amount of effort put for creation of vision, a rough skeleton of the product backlog. So now we do this whenever we need to understand certain things, how things looks like, to get certain insights. So this also includes insight towards estimating the release of products. So you get some vision, it gets some clarity, right? So this Sprint Zero are required to create project skeleton alongside research spikes, keeping minimal design, develop a small number of stories completely, have low velocity and be lightweight. So speaking about this spike, so spike is set of activities used in extreme programming. I think this was introduced there in extreme programming, that is one of the agile methodologies. So involving research, design, investigation, making proof of concepts, etc. So the objective of spike is to reduce the risk of technical approach by gaining knowledge, which helps understanding requirements and to improve reliability. So more aware we are, more clarity we have, I think putting step further will become easier. So informed decisions you can take. So next question, what is Scrum of Scrums? Now Scrum of Scrums is a terminology used for scaled agile techniques, which is required to control and collaborate with multiple Scrum teams. So when will we come across the need for collaborating between multiple Scrum teams? So these are the scenarios where organization has a complex structure, complex in nature, where you may require to handle them together, all of them together for accomplishing the common objective for business. Various Scrum teams you would have. So Scrum of Scrum helps in terms of better collaboration and handle them easily or better way, better control. It is best used in the situations where teams are working together on complex assignments. Just visualizing the system, various different deliverables which are not a simple deliverables which we can do with a simple Scrum team. Instead, we have various different deliverables which needs to be made, and dynamics are too complex. So bigger projects, then Scrum of Scrum approaches can be taken. So scaling the agile methodology to that level. So it is used to establish the required transparency, collaboration, adaptation to the required scale to ensure the products can be developed and delivered. So whatever the products are delivered, whatever we consider to be delivered, so those needs to focus on the business objectives, which is very essential. So what is user story mapping? So user story mapping represents and arranges user stories that help with understanding the system's functionalities, the system's backlog, planning releases, and providing value to the customers. So first of all, we write user stories to understand the required features functionality in the user perspective. Now, if we map those user stories, which user story link to other user story, which functionality links to other functionality, determining that will become easier. So now user story maps arranges user story based on the priority along the horizontal axis. On the vertical axis, they are represented based on increasing level of sophistications. So this will help in terms of handling in a regular flow, in a specific flow, not regular flow, specific flow, so that things can be done in order with full clarity. So question number 13, what happens in sprint retrospective? So after the sprint review, so sprint completes, so sprint review happens, the sprint retrospective is done. So during this meeting, the lessons learned, what went well, what mistakes we did, what were the issues, so is there any new way of doing things? So all these are discussed so that these necessary corrections can be considered in the upcoming iterations, the sprints. So data from year is incorporated when planning the new sprint. So the learning what you had, you are going to collect it, what went well, what went wrong, what was supposed to be the best approach and how did we approach it? Is there any other way of doing it? So these are discussed and very essential to do it at the end of completion of each of the sprints review. Question number 14, what is empirical process control in Scrum? So empiricism refers to work based on facts, experiences, evidences, observations and experimentation. So empirical process control is established and followed in Scrum, ensuring project progress and project interpretation is based on facts of observation. So actual facts and figure is very important. Any decisions what we make, any progression what we make should be always based on ground facts and actual pictures. We should not deviate from it. So these rely on transparency, observation and adoption. Obviously when you are working on the data on ground reality, so you are working on the actual one. It is transparent. It is on the observed data. The mindset of the team and the shift required in the thought process and culture are very essential to accomplish the agility required by organization. So mindset of the team is very essential. And adoption of process, compliance to the process, the culture, the behavior obviously plays a very important role when you do something within the organization. So that needs to be done as per the need, which should complement to the business objectives. Very important. And that should be based on facts, not on some thoughts or assumptions or ideas. So next question is, what are some drawbacks of using Scrum? So Scrum requires individuals who have experience without whom the project risks will have a risk of failure. So one does not have a capability, difficult. Scrum requires team to be collaborative and committed. So people collaborating, individuals collaborating itself is a big challenge in many organizations. So bringing this into the place is very important when you want to adopt Scrum. So Scrum requires teams to be collaborative and committed to ensure the required results. They should work together and also they should collaborate with customers, stakeholders. The less experienced Scrum Master can cause the failure of the project. So be careful. Scrum Master is the one who is facilitator. We should understand this. Who enable the Scrum teams, who ensure Scrum teams goes the way we need them to work. If Scrum Master doesn't understand this dynamics, does not have the clarity on this, obviously he or she cannot enable to team to become that. If tasks are not well defined, the project can have any inaccuracies. Scrum works better for smaller projects and would be difficult to scale to large complex projects. That's where we were discussing on a few questions before this. Scrum of Scrum we were discussing about when it becomes a complex project, which those needs to be handled together, which will become complex. So next question is, what are the skills of a Scrum Master? So a strong understanding of Scrum and Agile concept. Scrum Master should have fine-tuned organizational skills, So when Scrum Master is working with a self-organizing team with various different capabilities, so unless the organization skills, interpersonal skills, if Scrum Master does not have, working with them will become difficult. So Scrum Master should be familiar with technology that the team uses. Basic understanding of that, how it works, the dynamics associated with that. And Scrum Master should have an ability to coach and teach the team to follow Scrum and its methodologies. And very clear about the terminologies, artifacts, and all the events what happens. So Scrum Master should have an ability to handle conflicts and resolve them quickly. So conflict is a scenario which would happen for various different reasons. However, when conflict occurs, the Scrum Master should not shy away from it. Own it to resolve in the interest of the project, whatever is being done. It is very important. Scrum Master has to be a servant leader. So it is not like I'm a specific manager or leader of certain kind and I'm doing this with certain way. No, I'm actually facilitating, I'm guiding, I'm showing certain direction to the organization so to the team. When I say organization, I'm speaking about Scrum team, so that they are enabled to take up the specific project and accomplish the results accordingly. Question number 17. How can discord be dealt within the Scrum team? Now the root cause of the issue need to be identified and addressed. Complete ownership needs to be established when you deal with this and try to diffuse the disagreements. So emphasizing on the focus area that complements the project. So here when we take up any of the discussions, any of the opportunities or any actions what we take, everything should be revolving around ultimate objective of whatever we are doing. So when we need to resolve something, when we get into the root causes, always it helps to look at the actions in terms of eliminating those causes. So once the causes are eliminated, it is quite obvious you can able to deal with it and address it with easily with the right set of actions. So emphasize on focus areas that complements the project, in the sense that should be the ultimate direction. Not my individual interest, not that individual interest. I favor this person, I favor that person. That should not be the case. So favoring this solution or favoring that solution, I'm okay with this particular technology, I'm very happy with this technology. Not such thoughts. It is the direction what is set, I should move things in that direction. So to establish a common understanding and to guide the team to that direction. Performing continuous monitoring and providing complete visibility. Very, very important. The next question, what is a user story? So user stories are an agile software development project management tools. It provides the team with simple natural language explanations of one or more features written from the end user's perspective. Now, for example, I am a account holder in a bank. So first, what is the facility a bank would give to account holders? There is ATM banking, there is net banking, there is mobile banking, and there is over the counter. Now, when bank is working on creating certain specific features or specific mobile app to the account holders, now what are the things user needs? That needs to be visualized. Now, if I say the role here is account holder, as an account holder, I want to download the statements of every month. As an account holder, I want to download the statements every month. This is what my requirement is. How will you facilitate this? This will provide the insight towards how the bank, what are the features and functionalities, and how these requirements can be fulfilled by the bank, and what features functionality the particular mobile app should have, so that account holder can download the statements. So user stories will provide that insights, what every users. So account holder is not just an user here. There are many users when it comes to mobile app of a bank. We have people who monitor it, manage it, who develop it. So they need to have a clarity on what exactly they need, and that needs to be written as part of user story, that what features, functionality can be easily determined out of it. So a user story does not go into detail. It just mentions, as I gave an example, it just mentions how a certain type of work will bring value to the end user. The end user in this case could be external end users or even internal customers or colleagues within the organization. So if I'm an organization, I produce an HR application, I create an HR application for claim processing, which I don't have till today. So that is for internal users. In the bank example, I'm speaking about external customers. So user stories also form the building blocks of Agile framework like epics and initiatives. These help ensure that the team work to the goals of the organization through epics and initiatives. So further, the requirements for making the user stories a reality are added later after discussing with the team. So to write a user story, the involvement of the team members are very essential. They should discuss and come out and agree, yes, this is the features functionality which should be there. User stories are recorded on post-it notes, index cards, or project management software, whatever is feasible and whatever is available there. Next question, how are the user stories, epics, and tasks different? So user stories provides the team with simple explanation of business requirements created from the end user perspective, as we saw the few examples in the previous questions. Epics are the collection of related user stories. They're usually large and complex. So these epics are created with specific objectives in mind, and user stories are grouped. So that will form an epic. Whereas task refers to the one which are used to track work. So they are used to further broken down from the user stories. So there is the smallest unit in the Scrum used to track work. A person or a team or two people usually work on the tasks. So these tasks or through this task, I think the features functionality what are required to be accomplished are done. So question number 20, what is sprint? Now as I mentioned earlier in the question number 4, so sprint is the terminology used in the Scrum. I think we explained various different concepts as we went through. So sprint is the terminology is used in Scrum, which refers to time boxed iterations. So we understood what is this iterations in Scrum approaches when we are going through that. The creation of specific module or feature which is part of a product is done during the sprint. The duration of sprint varies between a week or two. So means it's a short duration. Simple few features functionalities are taken and created. So what is velocity? So velocity is the metric used in Scrum that is a measurement of the amount of work that is completed by team during the sprint. So this is help to measure how things are moving, how faster they are moving. It refers to the number of user stories completed in single sprint. So this speaks about that speed, or velocity. Velocity, how faster we are going, how slower we are going. This helps to vary the variations we can do in that velocity depending on what business need. So what are the responsibilities of a product owner? So product owner define the vision of the project. They anticipate the needs of the customer and to create appropriate user stories. So they don't write user stories as such. They definitely have a set of people who should get involved, the team, to write the user stories. A lot of discussion has to happen, brainstorming has to happen to write user stories. But product owner is accountable. So product owner has to evaluate the progress of the project based on this backlog, what project or product owner has, and has to be licensed for all product related questions. The team may have certain questions, sprints, as the sprint progresses. The Scrum team may have certain questions, clarification relating to the user stories. Those needs to be clarified. What is burn up and burn down charts? So generally when we say chart, it is a graphical representation. So burn up chart is a tool that is used to track the amount of work that has been completed. So it is a bar chart. The amount of work completed, the height of the bars keeps increasing in burn up chart based on what is completed, which will show the total amount of work the need to be done for a sprint or a project. So it is a bar chart where each of the bars keeps increasing in its height as number of things get delivered increases. So burn down charts typically, again a graphical representation, a bar chart. So what is pending to be delivered? It shows that. Now initially you will have a bigger bar, and as the project progresses the height of the bars reduces, indicating what is that is pending for deliverables. It is a representation of how fast the team is working through the user stories. It helps you to understand that. So it shows total effort against the amount of work for each iterations, which is helpful for you to see to that what is pending to complete. Question 24. How is estimation in the Scrum project done? So the estimation of user stories is done based on its difficulty, a particular scale in which is used to assess the difficulty of user stories. So you have to analyze how difficult or easy is that. Some of the scales which are used, like numeric sizing 1 to 10, t-shirt sizing like S, ML, XL, Fibonacci series or dog breeds based on their value. So many such approaches are taken. What are some risks in Scrum and how are they handled? So first of all, we should know what is risk. So some types of risk in Scrum are related to budget, people, sprint, product, knowledge and capability. Now when we say budget, risk of increase exceeding that allocated budget, taking more, looking for more variations. I estimated for X, it is going like X plus delta X. So can we control it? We need to look at that. So you need to assess that risk. In what possibilities the cost can escalate. People related, like team members, need to be of appropriate skills and capabilities. If they lack that, obviously difficult. It's not about just skills and capabilities. The culture, the behavior, the attitude, the energy, the synergy, that collaboration, what people will have. Then sprint related in terms of duration and deliverables, exceeding the duration, addition of scope to that sprint in between. So that challenges, that difficulties. So product referring to user stories and epics, having ill-defined user stories and epics, not properly articulated. There is no proper visualization when you look at that user story, not understanding. So nobody is explaining it correctly. So then knowledge and capabilities. So it is not just related to the people here, it's an entire system. Everyone who is involved with a specific resource with its capability. It can be technology capabilities also. So when I say risk, it basically involves identification, assessment, analysis and defining risk response plans and implementing them. Now, when I say assess, assessing the risks should be qualitative as well as quantitative. So depending on the impact and probability of a risk. If it is a high impact risk, obviously we are required to do both qualitative and quantitative. If a simple one with a very less impact, you can take the call accordingly to what extent you may require to analyze and have the response plans for it. So once you have implemented and defined and implemented the response plans, quite obvious you should keep monitoring it and manage the risks. Now risk impacts and probabilities may vary as the project progresses. So we may require to keep assessing the identified risk and keep identifying the new risks as we progress in the project. So these are done on a continual basis right from starting of the project till completion. The reason I told, it is essential to understand that the impact of the risk is based on the proximity of actual occurrence of the risk. Now for example, if you start working on something, nothing is delivered at the moment. Now if specific risk of people not available or customer is not involved, initial stage, very initial stage. So risk impact is accordingly. Project would delay in entirety or requirements not very clear, it is delaying. Something of that sort of impact you will have. Now as the project progresses, almost like 50% of the project complete. Now there is some challenges or risk associated with issues are occurring related to customers involvement. Now you are mid of project, so again you will have a different kind of impact. 50% is delivered. Now you need to progress because active involvement of stakeholders including customer is very important when you are becoming agile. So when that is not happening, as an example I am taking the involvement of customers, the collaboration part of it, if that is not happening, now here the impact level is not equal to the impact level when this happens in the starting of the project. Same type of risk what we are assessing. So that is the reason each of the risks you should keep assessing. The identified one keep assessing as the project progresses and check on is there any new risk is introduced as the project is progressing. So next question, what are some popular tools used in Scrum? So these are the list. So you can think of GitHub, Zoho, Trello, Jira Software, Yodix, varies version 1. So now what I am saying is these are the tools, technology tools. So when we say tools, we cannot just limit our thought to technology tools. So what exactly this tool does? What are the techniques used? That we need to be very clear, right? The metrics, what is measured, and methodology of measuring it, and what processes are used, what steps are used. So what needs to be used? So unless we are clear relating to specific type of project, usage of these tools may not make any sense. You cannot even implement or customize this for the requirement what you are trying to accomplish. So you be clear about it when you are selecting the tool. So 27, how does Scrum Master track sprint progress? So we have various different events which happens in Scrum, like daily Scrum meetings, Scrum retrospective, Scrum planning, Scrum review, and checking on the defects which are escaped, density of the defects, burn down, sprint burn down, velocity. So checking all of this provides the better insight to Scrum Master so that tracking the progress of the sprint will become easier. So, and how to deal with the scope creep? Now, before we understand the dealing with scope creep, we need to understand what is scope creep. So, the term scope creep refers to the change which is uncontrolled and added without checking the impact on the constraints like scope, time, costs. Now, what happens is you will be doing certain or delivering certain features. Now, you are forced or you are influenced or without your knowledge, some additional things are put in place. So, which may impact later. It may add value, it may not add value later, doesn't matter, but it may lead in terms of impact your cost, time, and schedules, which is unexplained. And that extra effort what you have put in, extra cost what you have put in, will become like not recognized by customers, and you will not get anything paid for it. So, scope, to avoid the scope creep, to deal with it, one has to ensure close monitoring of works being done on day-to-day basis, because scope creep can happen through team members. Team members are influenced by consumer. Because of that, it may happen. So understanding, communicating the vision to the team for ensuring the alignment. So the team is very sensitive about that changes what is happening. Then capturing, reviewing the project requirements regularly against what is delivered, to emphasize to the team and customer about the requirement signed off, so that someone will not come and influence you or make that additional things to be delivered. They need not push you, right? Ensuring any change introduced to go through change control, so no changes without any proper approval by the authorities, so that only those what is required to be implemented is implemented, and that is done formally through the formal change request. So avoiding gold plating. So it is a bit different thought process when we say gold plating. So we were doing the projects are trying to add certain things into the scope to please the customer, as an example, doing something additional, providing some additional features and functionality for which we are not paid. So scope creep is not a terminology used for it, but gold plating is the term used. But however, since it is an additional scoping, so we are just added here. So don't say that when the moment scope creep we says that is not gold plating. Gold plating is a different direction. So just to explain you, along with scope creep, what else would happen to where the additional deliverables would come in, which is gold plating. So question 29, what is MVP and MMP, which means minimum viable product and minimal marketing product. So now minimum viable product is a concept of lean startup which stresses upon the impact of learning while performing product development. So this allows one to test and understand the idea by getting exposed to the initial version of the product for target customers and users. So to accomplish this, one has to collect all the required relevant data and learn from the collected data. So the thought behind MVP is to produce the product, to provide access to the users, and to observe how the product is used, perceived and understood. This will also provide more insight towards what the customers or users' needs are. So when it comes to minimal marketable product, this refers to the description of the product, which will have a minimal number of features that addresses the requirements of the users. The MMP would help also the organization reduce the time to market, because you have the clarity what is that we may require to provide. Now question number 30, what does DOD means? Definition of done, right? So DOD refers to the collection of deliverables, which includes written codes, comments on coding, unit tests, integration testing, design documents, release notes, etc. This would add variable and demonstrable values to the project development. So DOD is very helpful to Scrum while identifying the deliverables to achieve the objectives of project for the stated reason above. So defining the steps required to deliver the iterations, the usage of appropriate tool like burn down to make the process more effective, ensuring on-time feedback throughout the project lifecycle, ensuring the walkthrough of the product backlog items are done and understood correctly. So then creation of checklists for product backlog item, ensuring the DOD is defined to become task oriented, involving the product owner for reviewing during the sprint and sprint retrospective. That is about DOD. The next question, how can a Scrum Master be a servant leader? It's a very important thing to understand. So what is the meaning of the servant leader? The term servant leader mainly stresses on service orientation, which a leader should demonstrate. So today we say every organization is service organization. Even an organization who is producing car, if there is no service orientation, they cannot sell. So more stresses on being service orientation. The Scrum Master needs to be facilitator, a guide, a mentor, etc. This helps the team have increased involvement and empowerment. So now question number 32, how can one coordinate between multiple teams? So one of the most common approaches for this is Scrum of Scrums meeting. So where members representing each Scrum team discusses the progress, performance, issues, risk, etc. together. This is complex structure, what you're speaking about. The frequency of these meetings must be predefined, well articulated, well defined. Generally, Scrum Master would represent the particular Scrum team. On behalf of that Scrum team, they would go and represent in the meeting. Besides having a Chief Scrum Master, whose responsible is coordination and collaboration among all Scrums, who facilitates these meetings.
So thank you for completing the Scrum full course by Simplilearn. You have gained invaluable skills that are in high demand in 2024. As companies increasingly adopt agile practices, your expertise in Scrum will make you a top candidate for leadership roles with competitive salaries to match. Continue to apply that you have learned and you'll find yourself well prepared to guide teams to success in any project. Best wishes for your future in Scrum.
Staying ahead in your career requires continuous learning and upskilling. Whether you're a student aiming to learn today's top skills or a working professional looking to advance your career, we've got you covered. Explore our impressive catalog of certification programs in cutting-edge domains, including data science, cloud computing, cybersecurity, AI, machine learning, or digital marketing. Any of our programs and set yourself on the path to career success. Click the link in the description to know more.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.